I get stronger by spending money in Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101, Collecting Due. How did it work? After class, Haley and Joel rushed to the library together. The transfiguration we learned before was based on objects. She frowned, tapping her forehead with her thin and long index finger, looking quite distressed. Summoning is the same, Joel whispered. Professor McGonagall reminded me very clearly that it is also a kind of transfiguration. Huh. Haley still didn't understand as they were almost at the library. Joel hadn't spoken much in the past 2 months, but once he spit out the mandrake leaf, he spoke much more eloquently than before, and he also said a lot more. The essence of summoning is still transfiguration, but the carrier of transfiguration is usually visible and tangible, while the carrier used in summoning is everywhere, and is always easy to be overlooked. Are you talking about the air? Haley's eyes widened. Joel didn't comment. You don't need to learn so much now. We won't formally learn summoning until the 5th grade. Then how do you know so much? The two of them stepped into the library, and Madam Pinch successfully stopped Haley's questioning with her eyes. After filling his stomach at night, Joel returned to the empty dormitory, picked up the crystal vial and walked out. The crystal vial was half filled with Joel's saliva, and the mandrake leaves were soaked in it. The sky was very good tonight, and a full moon was hanging in the sky. Joel pulled out the cork of the bottle, and pulled out a strand of his hair. Unexpectedly, he pulled out a small handful of hair. He took one of the excellent ones and added it to the crystal vial, then shook it repeatedly. The liquid in the crystal vial reflected the shape of the moon. A quarter of an hour later, Joel screwed the lid of the crystal vial on. In his memory, this step should also include strict requirements for dew. It must be collected on a full moon night and collected from a place where there has been no sunlight or human contact for 7 days. Joel had already thought of the collection location. It was not yet curfew time. He swaggered over the hillside and went to the corner along the Black Lake. A month and a half ago, he and Haley often came here and noticed that no classmates set foot in this place on weekdays. As long as he collected dew from the plants near the water in this remote corner, and then went to the crystal bottle at dawn and added a pupa of a ghost moth, purchased with the mandrake leaves 2 months ago, he would be done. Joel hummed a little tune and came to the Black Lake and then saw 2 rows of shoe prints. Joel was stunned for 2 seconds and then walked forward along the lake. The shoe prints were still haunting and kept swaying in front of Joel. The last heavy rain was 2 days ago and this row of footprints was clearly visible. No matter how you think about it, they must have been stepped on in the past 2 days. Joel didn't dare to use the dew on the leaves of plants in such a place. Once it was contaminated, a month's hard work would be wasted. Joel didn't believe it until he saw the backs of Qiu and Eddie in front of the iron fence. The two were close together and chatting quietly. Qiu gently patted Eddie's back, as if to comfort him. Neither of them noticed Joel behind them. The road ahead was blocked. The Black Lake was too large. The fence of Hogwarts enclosed part of the Black Lake within the school. To get to the other side of the Black Lake, one had to row a boat or sneak out through the gate. The gate key was in Filch's hand, and Joel couldn't get it out. As for the self-driving magic boat used by freshmen, Joel was not sure whether Dumbledore or Hagrid could sense it. What's more, Cho and Eddie were still there, and it was unknown how long it would take for them to leave. In fact, in addition to the edge of the Black Lake, there was another place that was rarely visited on weekdays and was suitable for collecting dew. Joel looked back, and the mountains in the Forbidden Forest in the distance looked holy and pure under the moonlight. Harry and the other 2 received the note this morning. If nothing unexpected happened, the 3 of them, plus the offending Malfoy, would appear in the Forbidden Forest and meet Professor Quirrell, who was controlled by Voldemort. The whole process was safe and sound. Joel pondered for a moment and felt that he could not bear the pain of holding the mandrake leaves in his mouth for another month. The nauseating feeling of having something stuck in his throat was unforgettable for him. He had to be on guard when he went to bed, fearing that he would accidentally swallow the leaves. He planned to use the disillusionment charm to get dew from the outer edge of the Forbidden Forest. After knocking on his head, it was like a basin of cold water was poured over his head. After Joel made sure that his figure was completely hidden, he boldly rushed to the Forbidden Forest. When passing by Hagrid's hut, Joel saw Hagrid coming out with a crossbow on his back, followed by a vigorous hound. Hagrid moved his clumsy body to lock the door of the hut, then sat down on a wooden stake beside him and began to sharpen the bow and arrow in his hand. With Hagrid's size, the bow and arrow played no worse role in the Forbidden Forest than the wand. The 4 students who were punished with confinement had not left the castle yet. Joel slowed down his pace. He was not in a hurry. It would be safer and more prudent to wait until Harry and his group entered the Forbidden Forest and met Quirrell before taking action. He didn't want to run into Quirrell possessed by Voldemort. As soon as he entered the forest, Joel tried to hide as much as possible, even though the opposing boss was at low health, but his equipment had not yet developed. Moreover, it was not his turn to deal with the boss. The Chosen One and the boy who lived would take over the heavy responsibility without hesitation, and he didn't even have the position to cheer. He stood there waiting for a long time, and even after 2 disillusionment spells, sporadic lights started to move outward from Hogwarts Castle, and the movement was extremely slow. When he got closer, he found that it was Filch, who was holding a lantern in his hand, followed by Harry and the other 4, and arrived late. "Why are you so slow?" Hagrid said gruffly. "I've been waiting here for a long time. Today's mission is very important." Heh. These students know nothing about the dangers of the Forbidden Forest. I briefed them on the way. Filch handed 4 students to Hagrid. "I'll pick them up here at 6 tomorrow morning, if they are still alive." Malfoy snorted, obviously extremely dissatisfied with Filch's words, but his trembling legs revealed his inner thoughts. "Okay, Filch, your mission is over," he said unceremoniously. "It's my job next." Filch cursed inwardly, turned around and left with the lantern. Then Hagrid reminded Harry and the others of the safety precautions for entering the Forbidden Forest, and hesitated for a long time before entering the Forbidden Forest. Joel cast an disillusionment charm on his head again, and followed them quietly. "Do you see the silvery white liquid on the ground?" Hagrid stopped in front of a narrow path, and raised the lantern in his hand. "This is unicorn blood. Since the beginning of school, unicorns in the Forbidden Forest have been injured more and more frequently, and several unicorns have died. Under normal circumstances, animals in the Forbidden Forest will not embarrass unicorns." Hagrid felt very puzzled. Unicorns are the embodiment of holiness. Creatures that hurt unicorns will be cursed. Which guy is so stupid that he would do such a thing? No one paid attention to Hagrid. Under Hagrid's command, the 4 students split into 2 groups and followed a unicorn blood trail. Seeing Hagrid and others running deeper into the Forbidden Forest, Joel was relieved and turned his body 90 degrees to move in another direction, where there were few people and far away from the plot. Soon Harry and others would meet Quirrell in the depths of the Forbidden Forest. For Joel, this was the safest opportunity to collect dew. Chapter 102, Tiger Cub. The towering oak trees and low bushes are about half an hour away from the entrance of the Forbidden Forest. No one usually comes here. Joel is squatting beside a few short plants, collecting dewdrops from the leaves with a crystal bottle. Watching the crystal bottle being filled up little by little, Joel's mouth curled up slightly. A red spark suddenly jumped out of the woods in the distance and exploded in the air, reflecting Joel's cheeks red. Then there were a few screams in his ears. The distance was too far to hear clearly, but he could still hear some panic. Hearing these screams, Joel felt happy. The crystal bottle was full. Joel buckled the bottle with satisfaction and then carefully placed it in the innermost layer of his robe. Yawning, Joel was ready to go back to the dormitory to rest. When he stood up, his back suddenly tightened, and the long-lost feeling of being followed appeared again. Joel lowered his head, and the disillusionment spell was still protecting him. He couldn't see his body clearly with the naked eye alone. He felt relieved. Last time, he stayed in the cave for such a long time without being discovered. Joel was very confident in his illusion spell. If nothing unexpected happened, it was another beast searching for prey this time, and it just happened to see through Joel's body. Joel remained in his position, intending to wait for the beast to leave before moving forward. There was a rustling sound from the bushes behind him, which was made by the beast's paws pressing on the weeds. Joel smelled a fishy smell, a familiar smell that seemed to have been smelled somewhere before. Then a soft pad of meat rested on Joel's leather shoes. Joel, a tiger cub with heterochromatic pupils appeared in his field of vision. It was the one Joel had seen before. It was now several times larger than a few months ago, nearly 1 meter long, with sharper teeth, and the striped markings on its forehead became more obvious. I don't know if it was Joel's illusion, but he felt that the tiger cub's heterochromatic pupils were brighter than before. The tiger cub raised its head and growled at Joel's face. This roar scared Joel so much that his heartbeat slowed down. Can it see him? Joel stared at the tiger cub's eyes that were still bright in the dark. He became more and more panicked. What about the adult tiger? If it followed the tiger cub, wouldn't it also discover him? Joel's heartbeat kept getting faster and faster, and he instinctively wanted to run away. But before he could even take a step, Joel found that he couldn't pull his feet out at all. The tiger cub's meat pads were on top of it and didn't move at all. Joel, who was forced into a corner, took out his wand and said, "Faint." This was already the strongest spell he could use on the tiger. Although spells like disarm your weapon could also be used on animals, the effect would not be very good. As for the thunderbolt explosion, the power of this spell was strong enough, but using the explosion spell rashly at such a close distance might cause Joel to be seriously injured. Magic power flowed from his body to the wand, and red light spurted out from the tip of the wand. The speed of the spell was extremely fast. The tiger cub had no way to avoid it at such a close distance. It was hit on the forehead by the stunning spell. The huge impact pushed the tiger cub back. Joel's feet were free again. He didn't even look at the tiger cub and ran out of the forbidden forest. He walked through the low bushes in the evening breeze. The thorns of some plants pierced Joel's trousers and hurt him, but he didn't dare to stop. The sound of the wind and the heavy breathing mixed together, and his throat was burning and uncomfortable. Suddenly, there was a sound of breaking air behind him. Joel sensed the approach of danger and hurriedly tried to dodge sideways. An unusually huge force came from Joel's shoulder, knocking him off balance. Then he was tripped by the branch under his feet and fell to the ground. A pain came from his left ankle, and he twisted it when he fell to the ground. The tiger cub with heterochromatic eyes jumped in front of him, with curiosity written all over his face. Joel clenched his wand and pointed it at the tiger cub. After being hit by a stun spell, the tiger cub only had a wound of several inches on its forehead, and silver blue blood flowed out. The spell caused very limited damage to the tiger cub. Joel had no other weapons in his hand, and the hammer of repentance was still lying obediently in the suitcase. What surprised him most was why the tiger cub, who could not see his figure in the cave last time, could now find him accurately. The tiger cub approached step by step, and the bright moonlight shone on its face through the branches. Facing the moonlight, Joel was surprised to find that the shallow wound was healing continuously. After a few breaths, the skin on the forehead returned to its original appearance, leaving silver blue blood flowing along the hair to the mouth, and the posture looked particularly hideous and terrifying. There are many obstacles. Joel had no other choice. The only thing he could rely on was the wand in his hand. The tiger cub did not dodge and let the obstacle spell hit its body. It was slightly backed up by the impact. That was all. The tiger cub tilted its head, with a human-like puzzled expression on its face. Joel was disappointed. This place was too remote. Hagrid and the others were probably in a state of chaos, and couldn't take care of themselves. Even if Joel sent out a distress signal, they wouldn't be able to get here in time. Joel leaned against the tree trunk, and took a deep breath, closing his eyes. No matter what, he couldn't have imagined that this tiger cub could see through the disillusionment curse and even be immune to the curse. He would be buried in the tiger's mouth today, and he couldn't even keep a complete body. This result Joel had never expected. He thought that he could take advantage of the system and the original plot to avoid harm and rest assured. Unexpectedly, he fell into the hands of a young tiger. Joel relaxed and accepted his own ending. Suddenly, a soft and furry thing pressed on his abdomen. Joel could imagine that he would be disemboweled in the next second. The furry thing rubbed his abdomen, not sharp, but a little itchy. Joel couldn't help but open his eyes. The tiger cub was lying on his belly with its white belly exposed, and its expression was relaxed and comfortable. What's going on? The tiger cub saw Joel open his eyes and patted his belly with its paw pads, with an expression of come and play, old man. Joel's eyes twitched twice. He now suspected that the tiger cub had a problem with his brain. After not seeing any action for a long time, the tiger cub was a little angry. It patted Joel's shoulder with its paw pads and used a little force. Joel almost felt that his arm was removed by it, but looking at its expression, it didn't look fierce at all. Joel remembered the palm that patted his shoulder when he ran away just now. Compared with the size of this tiger cub, its strength can be said to be quite outstanding. The tiger cub let out a low roar similar to that of a racing motor and kept twisting its body. Joel placed his palm on the tiger cub's belly with doubt and rubbed it twice. It made a snoring sound and squinted its eyes to enjoy it very much. Chapter 103, Abducted. Joel was not so comfortable. As the saying goes, living with a king is like living with a tiger. Right next to him was a tiger, the kind that could break a person's shoulder with a slap. He rubbed the tiger's belly while thinking about how to escape. After rubbing for 4 or 5 minutes, the tiger finally turned over and climbed up, staring at Joel with its strange eyes that could see through Joel's disillusionment spell. The eyes were shining in the dark night. Joel felt that he had rubbed the tiger's intestines to smooth it out, and now it finally had enough space to eat. The tiger opened its mouth, grabbed the corner of Joel's robe, and pulled him into the depths of the forbidden forest. This tiger was not only thick-skinned and strong, but also more than one level stronger than Joel in strength and speed. He had no choice but to surrender. Half an hour later, Joel sighed as he looked at the cave in front of him. He remembered the white bones he saw after entering the cave last time and thought that he would become one of the bones soon. The road leading to the cave was slippery. Joel looked down and found that the plants inside were stained with dark red blood. After entering the cave, the moonlight disappeared and the vision gradually darkened. Joel and the young tiger saw the adult tiger father lying on a boulder. It looked miserable. A big hole was cut open in its abdomen, and all the intestines and internal organs flowed out. The young tiger found that his father was lying on the boulder and was dying. He quickly loosened his mouth that was biting Joel's robe, ran to his father, and nudged him with his head. Feeling the call of his child, the tiger woke up slowly, and it let out a low roar, unable to hide its sadness. It found Joel standing in the cave, and the tiger got up from the ground and pounced on Joel with all its strength. Joel retreated to the corner, and the tiger fell heavily in front of Joel due to exhaustion. The gravel on the ground rubbed against the wound, and the pain prompted the tiger to scream, and it turned over on the ground to avoid touching the wound. Joel saw the wound on the tiger's abdomen. It looked like it was cut by some sharp blade. The wound was smooth and deep. Knife curse. This was Joel's first reaction when he saw the wound. Apart from this, there should be no creature in the forbidden forest that could cause such a wound. Who did it? Joel frowned tightly. The tiger was roaring and commanding its child. Joel could only smell the fishy smell in its mouth. It had lost the ability to hunt prey and was urging the child to kill the humans who invaded their territory. The tiger cub's eyes wandered between his father and Joel, and it seemed difficult to make a choice. Just as it moved its claws, Joel heard footsteps coming from behind. They were not fast or slow, not anxious or impatient, but every step seemed to weigh on people's hearts. The two tigers reacted very quickly and roared towards the cave in trance. A man in a black robe and a black hood walked in, holding a magic wand in his hand. The moment he saw the man, Joel's sense of crisis increased sharply. Standing in the corner, he did not dare to move. "Finally found you," the man's voice sounded. Joel's heartbeat stopped for a moment. He could tell the owner of this voice. He had taken classes from this man at Hogwarts. Quirinus Quirrell, or Quirrell under Voldemort's control. His tone now was completely different from the trembling and stumbling tone in class. It was eerie and cold. Joel didn't dare to say anything. His ankle began to ache again. Before Quirrell noticed him, Joel quickly cast an disillusionment charm on himself. "Good tiger." Quirrell laughed after seeing the tiger's miserable appearance. "I have to thank you for returning to your shelter after being injured. Otherwise I would never have found your child." The tiger roared angrily. It recognized this man. When it was snatching a unicorn tonight, this man attacked from underneath it and almost cut its body in half. From birth to now, it has never been injured so badly. The man's knife curse is extremely strange. The energy contained in it is like a maggot in the tarsal bone, destroying and corroding every inch of muscle around its wound. Its strong physical recovery ability has aggravated the pain. It can only watch the wound heal little by little and then be torn again. It wanted to bite this human to death, but it couldn't do it now. Blood and energy kept leaking, and it was difficult for it to even run now. Quirrell laughed wildly. "Come on, let me see your child." Joel watched carefully. Quirrell waved his wand vigorously, and a rope fell from the sky, directly binding the young tiger. No matter how hard it tried, it couldn't break free. After all, it couldn't defeat Quirrell controlled by Voldemort. Voldemort's experience in controlling magic plus Quirrell's magic as an adult wizard were enough to trap this immature tiger. Quirrell looked at the tiger cub's body back and forth, and then laughed in surprise. As expected. The crazy voice bounced off the rock wall to form an echo, which made Joel's ears numb. On the other side, the seriously injured tiger father saw his child trapped. He had no strength left, and even his roar became low and weak, and the light in his heterochromatic eyes became dimmer and dimmer. Quirrell didn't want to endure the tiger's annoying roar any longer, so he raised his wand and hit the tiger's forehead with a knife-cutting curse. The bones in the forehead were eventually harder, and this knife-cutting curse didn't directly split its head in half, but it was enough to take the tiger's life. The light in the heterochromatic eyes disappeared completely, and the tiger cub's angry roar moved farther and farther away from Joel until everything returned to calm. Joel waited for a quarter of an hour, making sure that Quirrell would not turn back, and then walked out of the corner. The cave was still damp, and the stench was still lingering. The blood under the tiger's body was still flowing out, and its eyes were wide open. After all, it died with its eyes wide open. Joel was not such a saint, and naturally he would not go beyond his ability to rescue the tiger cub from Quirrell. Instead, he searched the cave. Why did Quirrell take the tiger cub away? Joel speculated that this was related to its physical abnormality. He still didn't understand why the tiger cub could see through the disguise of the disillusionment spell, and why didn't he kill him? The cave was not small, and Joel walked around and carefully checked if there was anything strange. In addition to a lot of animal remains and hair, there was no new discovery. Joel had to give up. He took some of the remains and hair and put them in his pocket, and then left the cave. Before leaving, he did not forget to leave mark in the cave. The sky blue scarf was left by him at the entrance of the cave, and then he used the weeds and dead branches near the cave as a disguise. After doing all this, Joel limped back to Hogwarts Castle under the blessing of the disillusionment spell. It was 2 o'clock in the morning when he returned to Ravenclaw Tower. His roommates had already fallen asleep. Joel tiptoed back to his bed, opened his drawer, added a pupa of the ghost-faced hawk moth to the crystal bottle, and then sealed it. It was too late, and Joel, who was dirty all over, didn't want to disturb his roommate's rest, so he simply lay down on the bed with his clothes on, and fell into a deep sleep. He slept until noon the next day, and Joel slowly woke up. His 3 roommates were nowhere to be found, and the beds were empty. Getting up from the bed, Joel smelled the fishy smell on his robe that had not yet dissipated, so he quickly ran to take a shower, changed his dirty clothes, and opened the bathroom door. Joel heard laughter in the dormitory, and Eddie and Alan were sitting on the bed with smiles on their faces, eating chocolate frogs. Hearing the noise, they both turned their heads at the same time. Joel immediately closed the bathroom door. Did he not sleep well last night? Why did he have hallucinations? Chapter 104, New Side Quest. Joel, what are you doing? Alan walked forward and pulled Joel out of the bathroom. We've reconciled. What did you do last night that I don't know about? Joel looked suspicious, holding a basin of dirty clothes in his hand. It's just. Eddie took a bite of the chocolate frog, and the frog only had 2 legs exposed, struggling desperately. Last night QIU came to talk to me, and then I felt that I was a little sensitive before, overreacted and said something hurtful. There was no big conflict in the first place. Alan took over the conversation. Just talk it out. Eddie also agreed to tutor. I don't want to get a few more T's and be held back for a year. That would be too uncomfortable. Eddie said frustratedly, I heard that the stupid big captain of the Slytherin Quidditch team was held back. By the way, didn't you ask Haley to find QIU Zhang? Eddie stuffed the frog legs into his mouth and then took out a bag of licorice sticks. "Why are you so surprised that we've reconciled?" Joel didn't say anything else. Haley asked about the conflict between Alan and Eddie yesterday. It was probably her who found QIU. "By the way, what did you do last night?" Alan suddenly asked. "Another night of absence." "Ah." Joel blinked. "I sprained my ankle when I went downstairs yesterday. It hurt for a long time, so I stayed in the hospital wing for a night." "Where's surgery?" Joel quickly changed the subject. "He went home," Eddie replied. "He left early this morning. I heard that he had something urgent to do. I saw that he was quite irritable." The atmosphere in the dormitory became harmonious and warm again. Joel's foot was seriously injured, but Madame Pomfrey in the hospital wing just applied some kind of green ointment to his injured area, and he was able to move without any hindrance in just one night. In the past 2 days, he would point the tip of his staff to his heart every sunrise and sunset, and whisper the spell, Amado, Animord, Animagus. This spell does not appear in the Transfiguration books circulating on the market. Most books only briefly mention Animagus, and at most explain the difference between Animagus and other Transfiguration spells. Even the method of distinguishing them is vague. If Joel had not advanced the Animagus to the advanced level, he would not have found a way to practice it. He guessed that James and others should have used the invisibility cloak to sneak into the restricted book area of Hogwarts, where they found detailed practice methods and finally became Animagus. Until Thursday morning, Sergi had not answered Hogwarts. The 3 people in the dormitory walked to the dark magic classroom with potion textbooks and parchment. They planned to complete the potion paper due next week in Professor Quirrell's class. At 8 o'clock, Professor Quirrell entered the classroom at the sound of the bell. The students below sat together in groups of 3 or 2 to chat, and many people did not even take their textbooks. Joel put down the book and looked at Professor Quirrell. Quirrell looked at Joel and lowered his head, hiding the light in his eyes. He did not care about the noisy students in the audience and stumbled to read the text by himself. Joel had just opened the potions textbook when the system suddenly gave him a prompt. "Congratulations on triggering the side quest. Rescue the heterochromatic tiger cub." The tiger cub fell into the clutches of the Black Hood. "What does he want?" "Mission requirements. Find the whereabouts of the heterochromatic tiger cub and rescue it safely." Mission success reward: the trust of the heterochromatic tiger cub. No penalty for failure of this mission. What kind of reward is this? What's the use of him having the trust of the tiger? Can it be used as a meal? If there is no penalty, then he might as well not do it. Joel knew who the Black Hood was. He was going to fight Voldemort for this little reward. Are you kidding? He is not a fool. "Well, I'm going to ask a few students to come up and give a demonstration," Professor Quirrell said, and the students in the audience laughed again. "About the content of the leg-locking curse. Are there any students willing to volunteer to come up on stage?" He seemed very afraid to communicate with his classmates. After saying this, he looked at the audience with expectant eyes. Unfortunately, no one paid attention to him. After a school year, the second-year students had a very clear understanding of Professor Quirrell's teaching style. In this case, as long as they ignored him, he would continue to talk after a while. After 10 seconds of silence in the Defense Against the Dark Arts classroom, Professor Quirrell's voice sounded again. "Please pull out the tables and chairs, make a space, and stand in pairs to practice the dance step spell." The voice was still stuttering, but there was a sense of unquestionable in his tone. The students sighed, but Quirrell was a professor after all, and they would not openly disobey orders, even if they were dissatisfied. They could only put away the extracurricular magazines on the desk and pull the desk away obediently. Sergi was not here, resulting in an odd number of students in class today. Eddie and Alan had just ended their Cold War and were in their honeymoon period. The 2 of them paired up and left Joel aside. Haley came over, as if she wanted to be with Joel, but QIU intercepted her halfway. Haley looked at Joel and saw him shaking his head at her, so she felt relieved to pair up with QIU. Joel was left alone. This year, Joel was praised by the professors of Hogwarts one after another, and he also had all O grades. His peers knew his level of spells very well. Naturally, no one wanted to practice with him at this time. It would be bad if he made a fool of himself in front of everyone. This was exactly what Joel wanted. He also wanted to think about his potion thesis. Professor Quirrell glanced at him. "Mr. Taylor, don't you have a partner to practice spells with?" Joel was stunned for a second. "Some classmates have asked for leave to go home, and they will be back in 2 days. Ah." Quirrell's tone made Joel unable to tell the emotion. "I'm very impressed by you." Joel's heart almost jumped out of his chest when he heard this. He was very panicked inside, and his eyebrows trembled uneasily. He grinned and showed the well-behaved smile that he should show when he heard the teacher's praise at this age. "The paper is very insightful," Professor Quirrell praised. "Although the difficulty of the slug spell is not high, few second-year students can figure out the working principle of this spell. Although there are some mistakes, it is still very profound overall." Joel felt cold all over when he heard this. In order not to attract the attention of Professor Quirrell, he deliberately made a few mistakes in the class assignment paper. He didn't expect that even so, he would still be targeted by Professor Quirrell. God is jealous of talents. Joel wanted to howl to the sky 3 times at this moment, complaining to God about the injustice of fate, why he couldn't hide his intelligence, even if he tried to hide his incompetence. "Please vote for me." Chapter 105, Quirinus Quirrell. "I heard from Professor McGonagall that you usually have excellent grades." Professor Quirrell seemed to have set his sights on him and found another topic. Joel stood side by side with Professor Quirrell. The smell of garlic in the purple turban made his nose itch. He stretched out his hand to rub it and watched Alan hit Eddie with a beautiful dance spell. His legs twisted uncontrollably like noodles, and he couldn't maintain his balance and fell to the ground. "It's just average, not outstanding." Joel pursed his lips and considered the answer for a while before responding. Professor Quirrell glanced at him, his expression dazed. "I'll practice with you," he suddenly said, startling Joel. "Stand 3 steps away from me." Joel was a little confused. When facing him, Professor Quirrell spoke clearly and his mind was sharp, and he was no longer nervous in front of everyone. Did he do it on purpose? Joel followed Professor Quirrell's instructions, took 3 steps forward, and then turned around. Haley, who had been closely observing Joel, saw this scene and panicked for no reason. She was successfully hit by Qiu on the opposite side. Her legs kept twitching on the ground. Her face turned red, and she was obviously embarrassed. Qiu immediately untied the dance spell and stepped forward to help Haley up. Except for Haley, no one paid attention to Quirrell and Joel in the corner. The two of them stood face to face, less than 3 meters apart. Joel clenched the wand in his hand, and Professor Quirrell had a blank expression on his face, spinning the wand on his thin fingers. "You go first," Professor Quirrell ordered. "Let me see what you can do." Before he finished speaking, Joel's evil curse had already shot out, as fast as lightning. Few of the students present were sure that they could take this curse at such a close distance. Professor Quirrell was not in a hurry. The wand stopped spinning. He raised his arm lightly, and the spell was bounced off by an invisible barrier and hit the wall of the classroom, splashing pieces of gravel. Tarantella dance. Professor Quirrell cast the spell very skillfully. He used the force of his arm that he had just raised to resist Joel's attack, to press his arm down violently. There were even sparks on the tip of his wand. When the spell appeared, Joel knew that he would definitely not get any good results. He did not dare to take the spell head on and dodged to the side. Other wizards would need to pause for 2 seconds to rest after casting a spell and wait for the magic power in their bodies to surge again before continuing to cast spells. But Professor Quirrell's movements were extremely fast. One dance spell after another flew out rapidly along his arm, and it seemed that he did not need to rest at all. Spells were fired one after another like machine guns. Joel had no way to avoid it after all. Forced by his fighting instinct and sense of crisis, he raised his wand and wanted to cast a spell to complete the defense. But he changed his mind and thought that he could not let Quirrell have further doubts. The strength of a normal second-year student could not withstand such an attack. He quickly gave up resistance and was hit in the chest by 2 dance spells. He was knocked to the ground by the magic power. His legs began to twitch and shake uncontrollably, and the shaking frequency was much faster than the one that Haley's was hit by Qiu before. Joel held down the wand and tried to stop it from shaking with his body. He aimed at his legs and cast a spell to remove the spell. His legs finally stopped shaking, and Joel breathed a sigh of relief. Looking up to meet Professor Quirrell's eyes, Joel tried to suppress his restless heart. His expression was a little strange, but Joel didn't think too much about it. The spell was so powerful that the stones on the wall splashed and caused a lot of noise. Seeing that the students around him were looking at him, Professor Quirrell returned to his previous nervous posture. I see that no one is practicing here, Mr. Taylor, so nothing else. You continue to practice, and later, when the bell rings, you can leave by yourself. Professor Quirrell gave the order and walked to Joel. Thank you, Professor. Joel sat up. Thank me for what? Professor Quirrell asked softly, with a deep meaning in his eyes. You taught me the spellcasting technique. Joel rubbed his calf. The spell that Professor Quirrell had just cast was quite powerful, and even his two legs were hurt by the impact of the magic, as if he had just finished a marathon. He naturally understood Professor Quirrell's intention. He still remembered the knife-cutting spell that Quirrell cast in the Forbidden Forest cave a few days ago. The movement was extremely obscure, and it was impossible to detect it without careful distinction. However, when practicing with himself, the arm movements were very obvious, allowing Joel to see every decomposed movement. Joel was also a smart man. He was able to analyze the intention of every arm movement of Professor Quirrell in the practice just now in just one time. He omitted most of the unnecessary movements and integrated defense and offense. This could save a lot of time and make the spell casting faster and smoother. Professor Quirrell showed a touch of approval in his eyes, but Joel did not see it. Good, Quirrell said, and the bell for the end of get out of class had already rung. I'll wait for you in the office at 7 PM on Saturday night. He said the last sentence in Joel's ear, and the smell of garlic almost made Joel faint. Joel's body froze until Quirrell left the defense against the dark arts classroom with the textbook in his arms, and then he collapsed to the ground. Joel, are you okay? It was Haley who rushed over before the two roommates, and her red cheeks were full of tension. Nothing serious. Joel grabbed Haley's outstretched hand and stood up. His knees were a little numb, and Haley quickly put her shoulder on him. The two roommates came late and quickly took Joel from Haley's hands, one of them holding one of his shoulders, and walked downstairs. Hiss. Joel felt a swollen pain when his heels touched the steps from time to time. He didn't know what was so mysterious about Quirrell's dance spell, but he always felt that the effect was much stronger than ordinary spells. Fortunately, it was only a physical injury. Madame Pomfrey had given him some ointment to treat his ankle last time. After returning to the dormitory, Joel applied a thick layer of ointment on his heels and calves, then crossed his legs and lay on a chair with his eyes closed. What did Quirrell mean? Joel didn't know how strong Voldemort's control over Quirrell was. Had Quirrell completely lost the ability to control his body? Was it the real Quirrell in today's defense against the dark arts class? Joel couldn't make up his mind, and coupled with what Quirrell said before he left, should he go to Professor Quirrell's office at 7 o'clock on Saturday night? Just as he was immersed in thinking, Eddie returned to the dormitory, holding a mango pie and pumpkin juice in one hand and a small medicine bottle in the other. Here, he handed both things to Joel. The ointment was given to you by Miss Selwyn. She asked you to apply it as soon as possible. Chapter 106. Preparations before the appointment. Part 1. Joel took a look at his ankle covered with ointment, thought for a moment, unscrewed the small medicine bottle sent by Haley, and sniffed it. It seemed to be similar to the ointment sent by Madame Pomfrey, but the smell was not pungent, but rather had a faint grassy scent. Since he had already applied the ointment, Joel simply did not use the one sent by Haley. What happened to Serge's family? Eddie sat on the chair and started gossiping. He has missed more than a month of classes this semester. I don't know. Joel was not interested in other people's family affairs, but if Sergi ran into trouble and needed help, he would also be obliged to do so. If you really want to know, go ask Professor Flitwick. Professor Flitwick, as the dean, was responsible for their leave requests and must know the reason why Sergi asked for leave to go home. Alan hurriedly brought a potion book over. Don't gossip. There are only 3 weeks left before the final exam. If you don't want to get a T, hurry up and review. Okay. Eddie agreed and took out his notebook. Joel shook his head. He had difficulty walking, so he simply lay on the bed and did push-ups. Although he was a wizard, it was also necessary to keep fit. After all, Joel had a dream of becoming a Malay wizard. Don't put sapgrass in the herbicide. It will dilute the crucible potion. After adding it, the effect of the herbicide will become very poor. Alan chatted and wrote a few words on Eddie's CLBT potion course solution. The exercises in this booklet originally had answers, but Alan had torn them all off early, letting Eddie finish them chapter by chapter. Moonstone powder cannot be added to the recollection potion. We must ensure that the main ingredient, the feather of the soundless bird, plays a full role in the potion. The effect of moonstone powder is too mild and is not suitable for the recollection potion. Potions are not difficult. You have to distinguish the habits and effects of these potion ingredients, and then pay attention to the heat when the potion is heated. When talking about potions, Alan's eyes lit up, and Eddie scratched his head in distress. He was not sensitive to the complicated names and habits of various potions. He felt dizzy and drowsy when he heard them. Alan assigned him a heavy workload of potion exercises, trying to get him to memorize the knowledge points in a short time so as to cope with the final exam. In addition to the written test, the final exam also has a practical operation assessment, which accounts for 50% of the total score. The practical operation assessment of the potion class is to brew potions. Eddie's brewing skills are extremely poor, but fortunately he has a lot of money. He bought a bunch of potion materials from the pharmacy in Diagon Alley and stayed in the dormitory all day to watch Alan demonstrate the techniques to him. Alan was also very determined. In the second year, he learned more than 10 kinds of potions. Aside from a few potions that were too simple and Snape was unlikely to test them, he demonstrated all the remaining potions to Eddie one by one. If one time didn't work, he would try twice, and if 2 times didn't work, he would try 3 times. Under his strict guidance, Eddie finally succeeded in brewing the first pot of potion. He looked at the swirling soup in his crucible, and his eyes were a little moist. Joel on the other side was uneasy. Under normal circumstances, he should not know Professor Quirrell's normal identity. Being called to the office by the professor was not a big deal, but Joel knew what was hidden under Professor Quirrell's purple turban. On Friday evening, Haley came out of Professor McGonagall's office with her notes, feeling a little dizzy. She had just asked a few questions about summoning. Joel's words before made her realize that she had opened the door to a new world and became interested in summoning. They went downstairs to the auditorium. As the weekend approached, the atmosphere in the auditorium was much more relaxed. "Are you having any troubles?" Haley sat next to Joel and asked him, seeing that he was frowning and worried. Joel put a piece of chicken strips on his plate and thought for a moment. "Professor Quirrell asked me to go to his office tomorrow night." Huh? Haley was a little curious. Why would a guy like him ask you to go to his office? It was obvious that she looked down on Quirrell in her words, and this was not surprising. Most students in this school had a bad impression of Quirrell, especially the sophomores and above. Compared with Professor White who taught them last year, Quirrell was simply terrible. Who knows? Joel shrugged his shoulders. He looked at Haley. "If there is something wrong with my body and memory, when I appear again tomorrow, you go find Flitwick, Professor Dumbledore, and tell him a word." "What are you talking about?" Haley was confused. "What problem with my body and memory? When we meet tomorrow, just ask me what gift I gave you last Christmas," Joel explained. "If there is anything wrong with my answer, you go find Professor Dumbledore. Quirrell is Tom." Joel bowed slightly and looked directly into Haley's eyes. "Just tell Professor Dumbledore, he'll understand." Haley frowned. "Okay, but can I ask the reason?" "It's Professor Quirrell. It's no big deal. I'm telling you this just in case." Joel looked at Haley's clear eyes full of worry and quickly used a smile to hide his uneasiness. "These are just my irresponsible guesses. Professor Quirrell may just want to teach me some spells." Haley snorted coldly, looking at the delicious food on the table without her usual appetite. "What spells will Quirrell teach? He may not be able to cast many spells himself because of his unclear speech." "What you said is a problem." Joel pondered for 2 seconds. "How do you think a person who is born with a stutter can cast spells? Falling unconscious? You can't cast spells like that, right?" Haley said uncertainly. "There will be great side effects if you chant spells improperly." Yes, they can't be born with the ability to cast spells silently. Joel knew that he had successfully changed the subject. Didn't you try to discuss it? I think this question is worth studying. Interesting. Haley's originally dim eyes suddenly brightened up. She picked up the cutlery to speed up her eating pace, intending to go back to the dormitory to think about this problem carefully, and Joel settled down to eat. Haley ate 2 mouthfuls of food and walked towards the tower, as if immersed in the question of how can a stutterer cast spells correctly. But when she left the long table, a trace of worry and uneasiness flashed in her eyes. How could she not know the reason why Joel changed the subject just now? But since Joel didn't want her to worry, she followed Joel's wishes and no longer showed any worry on her face. She has always been very well behaved. Sighing, Haley walked upstairs with her textbook. Joel at the dining table finally made up his mind that if he didn't go to see Professor Quirrell tomorrow, he would still find him for next week's class. He might as well go to the appointment openly. But preparations still needed to be made. Joel finished the food on his plate in a few bites and returned to the dormitory to open the system panel. Chapter 107, Preparations Before the Date, Part 2. Joel found the brain occlumency in the system panel. The first charge gift package had raised his brain occlumency level to the intermediate level. At that time, he could fool the sorting hat, but now it was obviously not enough. He had to face one of the most powerful dark wizards in the world. It takes 160 galleons to upgrade the brain occlumency to the advanced level. To be on the safe side, he spent 1200, 160 plus 320 plus 640 galleons in one go to upgrade the brain occlumency to the perfect level. After spending a large amount of gold galleons, Joel's mind went blank. He closed his eyes and felt that there was a small world in his mind. There were many characters in it, Joel himself, his roommates, Haley, Qiu, and even Professor Flitwick. Each character had a blank expression on his face, which looked scary. Joel manipulated Sergei, who was summarized in his mind, to show a devilish smile, with his mouth grinning. Anyway, he had never seen Sergei smile like this in his life, and it was funny to see it this way. On the other side, there were a bunch of scene pictures stacked together. Joel tried to put Sergei in the potions classroom to replace Snape, and then replayed the tampered memory. Sergei walked up to Eddie and looked at the pot of potion. He was furious and slapped Eddie on the back of his head, almost pressing his head into the crucible. Joel almost laughed out loud when he saw this scene. When the brain block technique is practiced to the top, it can construct a completely non-existent memory, and it can also modify the existing memory, so that the memory seen by the Legilimon is completely different from the truth. Snape relied on this top brain block technique to deceive Voldemort. Joel changed his memory bit by bit. He did not change the memory before the crossing, but he deleted and modified most of the memory after the crossing. He erased all the content related to the system. The Soviet Union, the Eternal Night People, the wrestling of gold and other memories that he did not want others to see were replaced by studying hard all night. This is in line with his character of a top student. The comprehension ability gained from traveling through time is obviously not at the level of a 12-year-old kid. He also created a setting of being aloof, indifferent, and unsociable. He has no friends in the academy, and his roommates are just casual acquaintances. He is not familiar with them at all. He is afraid that Voldemort will go to trouble his roommates and friends after reading his memories, so he simply changed himself into a lonely character with no one to love him and no one to love, so he can only study hard. This happens to correspond to the scene in the previous Defense Against the Dark Arts class where he practiced the dance spell alone. After tampering with all this, Joel went through his memory again and made sure that the character setting was not too abrupt and logical, and then he was relieved. His brain was a little swollen. He tampered with 2 years of memory in just 1 hour. Even if the brain occlumency was upgraded to the top level, it would not be able to withstand such use. He slept until dawn, and Joel found that he could switch between the two personalities freely. When he went to the toilet, he turned into a lone and hard-working top student to think about the summoning problem, and when he ate, he turned back to his original personality and fought with his classmates. He couldn't stand it for half a day. If he kept switching like this, sooner or later he would have a split personality. Thinking it over, Joel decided to live with his original personality, so he just exposed his memory in his brain, completely defenseless. A simple legilimency could read this memory. At 6:50 in the evening, Joel came to the Defense Against the Dark Arts office on the 3rd floor and knocked on the door gently. "Come in." Professor Quirrell's voice came from inside. Joel's heart was lifted. He took a deep breath and turned the doorknob. Professor Quirrell was standing by the window with his back to him. Joel took the opportunity to take in the whole picture of the office. Professor White's desk was originally full of books, while Professor Quirrell's desk was empty. There were only 2 bookshelves in the empty room, and there was a small door between the 2 bookshelves. Behind the door was Professor Quirrell's residence. Apart from that, there was nothing in the office. Joel frowned, not missing any details, and recording them all in his mind. "Mr. Taylor." Professor Quirrell glanced at the dark night view outside the window, turned around and said, "Please close the door." Joel felt that Quirrell was not right tonight. His tone was low and elegant, and even had a bit of bewitching meaning. Joel's first reaction to hearing this was to obey. The moment he turned around, Joel realized that something was wrong. He bit the tip of his tongue and stopped abruptly. The imperious curse? Joel's back was covered with cold sweat. The tip of his tongue was bitten. Joel felt a little bleeding. In addition to the pain, there was a taste of rust in his mouth. "Close the door, Joel." Quirrell saw him stop there, changed his name, and changed his tone. Now there was no difference from talking to ordinary people. Joel calmed down and honestly closed the door, turning his head to meet Professor Quirrell's inquiring eyes. "Professor, you called me here." Joel began his performance. "It's mainly to teach you dueling skills," Professor Quirrell said. "Defense against the dark arts. On the one hand, you have to deal with dark magic creatures, and on the other hand, you have to fight against dark wizards. Dueling skills are indispensable." "Fight against dark wizards?" Joel thought Professor Quirrell said it as a matter of course. "Is it the thief crying 'Stop thief'? I've seen your transcript and feel that you are a talented person, so I want to train you more. Train a successor to the Dark Lord? If there are no problems, we can start now." Professor Quirrell pulled out his wand and waved it in the air. A thick long carpet appeared out of thin air and was spread between the 2 of them. "Leaving this carpet will be considered a failure," Professor Quirrell explained the rules. The long carpet was about 3 feet wide, which meant that there was not much room to dodge spells. "Since your magic power has not yet fully developed, I will also suppress my magic level. You cast a spell first. Let me see what level your strongest magic is." Joel looked at Professor Quirrell with his hands folded on his chest and didn't care. In addition, he was played a trick on him before, so he couldn't help feeling a little unhappy. "Expelliarmus!" Joel shouted loudly, and the wand in his hand burst into red light. He did not dare to use his full strength, and only used 70% to 80% of his strength. Quirrell waved his wand lightly, and a transparent barrier stood between the 2 of them. Although he blocked the disarming spell, he still took a step back. "Very good." Professor Quirrell's eyes showed a touch of praise. "Where did you learn the disarming spell?" "The library." With the blessing of the perfect level of brain occlumency, Joel can lie without blinking. "I don't have many friends, and I can only stay in the library on weekdays." Professor Quirrell's eyes were dark and unclear, but he didn't say much. The 2 faced each other 5 meters away, and Joel took a deep breath with his right hand holding the wand like a sword. Chapter 108, Quirrell's Teachings. He stepped forward, made a fencing-like movement, aimed his wand at Professor Quirrell, and fired a petrification spell. Professor Quirrell held his wand across his chest and used the armor spell to block Joel's attack. But the petrification spell Joel cast earlier was just a prelude. He leaned forward, firing spells one after another from his wand. Unlike last time, the spells he cast this time were fast and dense, mostly a combination of minor jinxes. Spells like Expelliarmus and Avada Kedavra are certainly powerful, but Joel doesn't think such spells are practical in wizard duels. What does a high intensity spell mean? More magic power mobilized, longer preparation time, and easier for opponents to see through the action. Minor jinxes are the exact opposite. Less magic power consumed means more spells can be cast continuously in a short period of time, and more likely to hit the opponent. Don't underestimate the power of minor jinxes. They can't reach the level of one-hit kill like Expelliarmus and Avada Kedavra, but they are enough to greatly reduce a person's combat effectiveness in a short period of time. Often, when a curse hits, the balance of victory will tilt. With the negative effect of the curse, the subsequent stun spell, petrification spell, and disarming spell are easier to hit. Quirrell took 2 steps back and waved his wand in a very rhythmic way. He waved his wand not very fast, but all the spells attacking his torso were blocked one by one. As for the spells flying towards his limbs, he dodged them by bending his arms or hooking his legs, which showed that he was confident and at ease. Joel understood that this was because Quirrell's duel experience was superior to his, and he could avoid the spells as much as possible, and would only block those that could not be avoided. The consequence of this was that Quirrell's magic state remained much stronger than Joel's. Finally, after casting the last dance spell, Joel fell into a short period of exhaustion. His refreshed magic qualification was already quite powerful, but it still could not withstand such consumption. Quirrell seized this fleeting opportunity. He stopped retreating and took 2 steps forward. Now he was only 3 meters away from Joel. Such a close distance meant that Joel had very little time to react. Joel could only focus on Quirrell's wand and dodge Quirrell's attack with judgment and reaction. However, the width of the carpet did not allow him to move his body sideways. Quirrell's spell was stuck when his old strength had weakened and his new strength had not yet been born. Joel dodged 2 spells, but was still hit in the chest by a leg-locking spell. What followed was an obstacle spell, which directly bounced Joel off the edge of the carpet. The duel was over. Quirrell cast a spell to remove the spell on Joel. He rubbed his waist and barely stood up, looking up to meet Quirrell's eyes. Joel couldn't see the emotions hidden in his eyes. He only heard him say softly, "I didn't expect that you, a second-year student, could be so persistent and cast so many spells in one breath." Joel? He hoped that he was overthinking. "I can see that your spellcasting movements have been streamlined and are indeed much faster than before." Professor Quirrell waved his wand to collect the long carpet on the ground, but the shortcomings are still very obvious. He glanced at Joel. "Come here, I will tell you about the problem of spellcasting angles in a duel." Joel staggered in front of Quirrell, and the pungent smell of garlic made Joel's nose itchy. "Many of your spells just now were ineffective. I could even dodge them just by raising my arm." Quirrell's wand began to spin, and a bunch of silver particles appeared out of thin air, outlining a pattern in the air, reproducing the scene of the duel between the two. "Pay attention to the position of your wand during the duel. According to my experience, you must ensure that the tip of your wand points to the opponent's chest." Professor Quirrell used his wand to point to the chest. This position is very difficult to dodge, whether up, down, left, or right, and can force the opponent to use spells to resist. In most cases, the defender of a wizard duel will suffer a loss in magic power because the defender must ensure that the spells he arranges for defense can block the attack. To be safe, most wizards will cast more magic power for defense than the attacker. If you are equally strong as your opponent, you can save a lot of magic power and accumulate a certain advantage in the battle, just like I did just now. Professor Quirrell explained a lot. "I understand." Joel clenched the wand in his hand. "Professor Quirrell, can you give me another chance?" Professor Quirrell raised the corner of his lips. 2 hours later, Joel walked out of the room with a sore back. He clenched his left fist and knocked his back hard. He coughed twice. He lost all night today. He couldn't even hit Quirrell with a single spell. However, with his outstanding understanding and comprehension, he made rapid progress and could fight Quirrell on the carpet for a minute. But Joel was not complacent, even though he knew that Voldemort, who controlled Quirrell, was the strongest dark wizard in British history. He knew clearly that Quirrell not only suppressed his magic power, but also limited the scope of spell use. He may have mastered more dark magic than Dumbledore, which was also a great help for Voldemort to compete with Dumbledore. But when facing Joel, he did not use those dark magics, but only used some small spells such as the leg-locking spell and the obstacle spell. His duel with Joel was more inclined to feed moves. Joel yawned and decided to go back to the dormitory to review the duel tonight. The effect of brain occlumency was fully demonstrated here. As long as the time of the memory occurred within one day, he could pull out the complete details in his brain, whether it was fast or slow or reverse. The 1,200 galleons were well spent. It was a bit late at this time. Fortunately, it was the weekend and the curfew of Hogwarts Castle was postponed to midnight. The castle was deserted, and the students should have returned to the common room to play. He turned a corner, and came to the corner, to go downstairs and left. He met an unexpected person at the stairs. Hailey had a high ponytail, revealing her white neck. She was holding a thick history of magic in her arms. She paced back and forth at the stairs, muttering about the historical events of the Goblin War. Joel listened to half of it. Hailey, who had previously received a no in the history of magic, actually stumbled and recited it all wrong. Lexi walked to the end of the corner and turned back. Hailey met Joel's gaze. She raised the corner of her lips in surprise. "Are you okay?" she asked subconsciously, her worried eyes scanning Joel's body from top to bottom. Before Joel could answer, she continued, "What was the Christmas present you gave me last year?" "I can't remember." The answer to this question was modified by Joel using the brain occlusion technique. Whether Professor Quirrell used the Imperious Curse or Legilimency, he could not know the correct answer. Ravenclaw tiara brooch. Joel's voice was low, his eyes were ups and downs, and his heart felt like being scratched by a cat, itching tightly. Hailey breathed a sigh of relief. "Professor Quirrell didn't make things difficult for you?" Joel's mouth moved, but he still didn't tell her that Quirrell had practiced dueling skills with him all night tonight. He didn't believe that Voldemort behind Quirrell would be so attentive for no reason. There were still a few weeks before his identity was completely exposed, and Joel decided to keep Hailey away from him. "He talked to me all night about the resurrected zombies in the North African desert," Joel said with a helpless smile. "Professor White took us to see that thing last year. It's nothing special." He talked for 2 hours about how he fought wits and courage with the resurrected zombies. Hailey was completely relieved, and patted Joel on the shoulder. "I said it. Professor Quirrell can only show off his skills with his mouth." A slap hit the wound, and Joel grimaced in his heart. There was still a light smile on his face, indeed, but Professor Quirrell's ability to tell stories is still top-notch. "I believe this," Hailey said seriously. If he didn't stutter, he could record a bedtime radio station. The two walked downstairs side by side, and no one started the topic again. The atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. 5 chapters tomorrow. Keep your promise. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, Mystery of Life, Part 1. That, Hailey stammered. "There's a Quidditch match after the final exams. We are playing against Gryffindor. Do you think we can win?" Hailey asked, not wanting to keep the topic on the two of them. She had keenly noticed that Joel didn't want to bring the two of them any closer, so she couldn't help but sound a little sour when she spoke. "Of course." Joel raised his eyebrows. "Eddie and QIU are very strong. Speaking of the two of them, I have to thank you." Joel changed the subject. "Last time Eddie and Alan were in a Cold War." Hailey used her fingers to hook her hair behind her ears, revealing her fair face. "I just mentioned it to QIU, but I didn't expect her to pull Eddie to the Black Lake to enjoy the scenery and relax. Speaking of which, QIU has been paying attention to Eddie since that Quidditch match." Hailey unknowingly brought the topic to a strange direction again, and her cheeks flushed pink when she realized what was going on. Joel sighed. 13-year-old Western children are just beginning to fall in love. Children are sensitive and suspicious about liking. If a man and a woman have a slightly close relationship, they will have a heated discussion. Joel can understand all this, and he can also understand Hailey's intentions. He is not a fool. He reached out and rubbed Hailey's head. "You." Joel hesitated for a moment and met Hailey's clear and somewhat timid eyes. "You are still too young, Hailey. Emotional investment is not a joke. Calm down and think carefully, and give me some time. You definitely don't want to regret finding an unsatisfactory boyfriend." Joel simply said directly, "I'm not the kind of promiscuous person. Changing girlfriends is like changing robes. Let's both be cautious, okay? After listening to this, Haley raised her little head and nodded repeatedly, her high ponytail swaying and blinking. Then go back quickly, Joel chuckled, and his handsome face made Haley's face a little hot. Let's go to the library together tomorrow morning? Yes. Haley replied, her eyes curved into a crescent shape, and her eyes were full of smiles. The next morning, Joel was awakened by pain. Although Professor Quirrell didn't hit him hard last night, Joel's body was too fragile. He fell to the ground again and again, and his waist, back and thighs were all sore. He was too lazy to get out of bed to eat, so he raised his head from the quilt and wanted to find Eddie, the lunch tool in the dormitory. Unexpectedly, when he looked up, he saw Sergey, who was sitting on the bed and adjusting the quilt. Joel had just woken up, his head was still a little dazed. You're back. Yeah, Sergey replied and didn't say anything else, looking haggard and out of spirits. He saw Joel's eyes sweeping across Eddie's bed and pursed his lips and said, I ran into them in the auditorium. I heard they were going to the Quidditch field to practice serving and receiving. Ah. Joel's eyebrows drooped, his head resting on the back of his hands with a sad face, like a golden retriever. He couldn't sleep in because he had an appointment with Haley last night to go to the library to read, so he could only drag himself up and put on his robe. By the way, what are you doing taking leave to go home? Joel stuffed his head under his black robe and spoke in a muffled voice. It's almost the final exam. I don't know if it was the Soviet Union's gold wrestling trip that made Sergey trust Joel. He actually answered this question seriously. I live with my grandfather on weekdays. Not long after I entered Hogwarts, my grandfather fell seriously ill. No matter how he was treated, he couldn't be cured, but he was able to maintain his life with continuous treatment at St. Mungo's Hospital. The treatment cost of St. Mungo's Hospital is very high. Until my grandfather passed away last fall, our family's assets were emptied, and we owed thousands of galleons in debt. Then what? Joel stuck his head out of his robe. I remember you made a lot of money, right? A few thousand galleons should be paid back quickly. My dad is back from the United States, Sergey sneered, his eyes a little red. He owed thousands of galleons in a gambling city over there. He wanted to come back, to sell his property, to pay off the debt, but he didn't expect that all the money in the family was used for medical treatment. He wants to sell Rao's ancestral home. Sergey lowered his head and changed the quilt. Now that the weather is getting warmer, there is no need to cover the thick winter quilt. If we didn't owe Gringotts money and the goblins wanted to sell this mortgage to them instead of the Americans, I would not have known about this at Hogwarts. Just let me know if you need any help, Joel said softly. He then knew the reason why Sergey asked for leave to go home. Sergey sniffed, of course, but don't tell Alan and the others. There's no need. I know. Joel nodded. While reviewing for the final exams, Haley was also studying how stutterers cast spells. Joel always felt that he had led Haley astray, but after persuading her a few times, he found that Haley didn't listen. Once after the spell class, she actually approached Professor Flitwick to ask this question, which stumped the short Professor Flitwick. At 7 o'clock on Saturdays during these 2 weeks, Joel would go to the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor's office on the 3rd floor of the castle on time, where he would receive dueling guidance from Professor Quirrell. Apart from this, Professor Quirrell and him did not communicate about other issues, but Joel knew that Professor Quirrell's attitude towards him was different from others. Combined with his own life experience, Joel made another bold guess. Is there any connection between him and Voldemort? In various aspects, he and Voldemort have many similarities. An orphan, with extraordinary magic power, and a handsome face. Even the tricks he used to please the director of the orphanage when he was a child are similar. But in the original book, Voldemort's emotional line is almost zero, with only one fanatical believer, Bellatrix. Was there some kind of confusion in this world when he crossed over? Why did Quirrell, or Voldemort, teach him dueling skills? They clearly came to Hogwarts to steal the Philosopher's Stone. The professor who only read the concepts in the textbook in class, taught Joel to cram dueling skills after class? Is Voldemort so kind? If Joel's crossing caused the world to deviate from its original track, Joel was a little flustered at first, but he immediately came up with a brilliant idea. Coincidentally, this identity guess provided him with a starting point. The grueling final exam was finally over. Joel was sure that he had written the 1637 Werewolf Code of Conduct incorrectly. As for astronomy, the star map he drew was a mess. It would be difficult to get all O's this year, but Joel cared more about what happened next than the grades. On Saturday morning after the final exam, Joel gently knocked on Professor Quirrell's office door. After getting permission, Joel turned the door and walked in. Professor Quirrell was grading papers, with a purple headscarf loosely wrapped behind his head, which frightened Joel. There was no doubt what was behind the headscarf. "Joel, is there something wrong?" Quirrell's tone was slightly familiar. "Professor." Joel closed the door of the office and walked in front of Professor Quirrell. "How much do you know about my parents?" Professor Quirrell raised his head, with no emotion in his eyes. First update. Chapter 110. Mystery of Life, Part 2. Professor Quirrell sighed after a long silence. "I thought you could hold out for a long time. I wanted to find you after 2 weeks." Joel swallowed his saliva, and Professor Quirrell picked up the wand on the table and conjured a chair for Joel. "Sit down." Joel sat down, but his heart was still hanging in the air. "What do you want to know?" Professor Quirrell put down the paper in his hand, leaned back on the chair, crossed his hands, and had a bit of amusement in his eyes. "Are you my father?" Joel asked boldly, trying to show his excitement and nervousness, and his heart jumped up twice. According to normal logic, Joel couldn't ask such a question right away, because the question itself was too abrupt, and he was not sure whether Quirrell knew the whereabouts of his parents. But he was now playing a second grade student who grew up in an orphanage, had no friends, was obsessed with books, rarely interacted with people, and was extremely eager for his parents' love, so he lowered his intelligence to a certain extent according to the script, with the purpose of making Quirrell trust him. The script of The Philosopher's Stone has already begun. He is the director and the leading actor. Next, it depends on the acting skills of other actors in the script. The core idea of the script is to let the plot develop according to the original work. Quirrell dies, Voldemort continues to flee, and the Philosopher's Stone is destroyed. Only when the original plot continues to develop can Joel play the advantages of a time traveler. Once the plot collapses, his innate advantages as a time traveler will be lost. Professor Quirrell laughed, with inexplicable emotions in his eyes. "Joel, I'm only 25 years old this year. It's impossible for me to have a child as old as you." This answer was not what Joel wanted, but he was not stupid enough to point at the back of Quirrell's head and continue to ask. "Do you have any news about my parents?" "Joel, I can answer your questions, but you have to do me a favor." Quirrell's voice was a bit bewitching. The familiar sense of obedience surged in his heart again. Joel shook his head, bit the tip of his tongue hard, and finally woke up, after concentrating his mind. Joel was excited. "Professor Quirrell, just ask me if you can tell me who my parents are." At this moment, Joel felt like he was possessed by Leonardo, and his acting skills were no less than those of an Oscar-winning actor. Seeing Joel's attitude, Professor Quirrell grinned. "It's just a small favor, Joel. I won't make it difficult for you." He took out a piece of parchment from his desk. "I have a potion formula here. You can go to Professor Snape to make it. I still have to mark the final exam papers." "Don't worry, I've already told him in advance. Tomorrow night. How about it?" "That's it." It was unexpectedly simple. Joel thought about it in his mind, and roughly knew what Quirrell was thinking. The fish was hooked. Quirrell laughed, his eyes still without any emotion. "Of course, but you'd better get it done tomorrow night. I've already ordered the key to leave England." "You're leaving?" Joel was a little surprised. He felt hypocritical and disgusted with what he said next. "Excuse me, you are one of the few people in Hogwarts Castle who is willing to talk to me sincerely. You are the best teacher I have ever seen." He pretended to obey, but actually wanted Quirrell to die. This had nothing to do with whether Voldemort was his father. He just wanted to ensure that the original plot went smoothly. Harry and his friends had to go to the restricted area of the corridor on the 4th floor, pass through many levels, and finally confront Quirrell, who was possessed by Voldemort. Professor Quirrell sighed pretentiously, "But the African prince I saved before insisted that I go to teach at his country's magic school. I couldn't refuse his kindness." "Africa?" Joel's eyes lit up, and he seemed very cooperative. Are there magic schools in Africa? Of course, the school is located in the Moon Mountain in Uganda. Professor Quirrell saw that Joel was very interested in this, so he said a few more words. The wizards there don't use wands, but they have mastered the method of transforming animals. They seem to be blessed by the beast totems on the African continent, and the proportion of animagus among them is particularly high. Ah. Joel pretended to sigh. Quirrell suddenly started the next topic. Joel, I have to explain in advance that what I know about your parents is what I heard from others. Here is another way that may allow you to see your parents' faces. Have you heard of the legilimency spell? Quirrell looked into Joel's eyes. As I expected, Joel was quite pleased with himself. Watching the other party fall into the trap he carefully designed step by step, this feeling was incomparably beautiful. He began to play dumb, looking at Professor Quirrell without hesitation. I've never heard of this spell. It can make you recall the memories that have become blurred before. Professor Quirrell said sincerely, I think it's just right to use it to find your parents. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised the wand in his hand without waiting for Joel's consent. Legitimate memory. His brain was in a mess, and Quirrell turned over the memories inside and checked them again. He sat alone in the library to study. Lying in the dormitory late at night, the 3 roommates around him laughed and scolded, which was out of tune with him. In his memory, no one was close to Joel, no communication, no friends, no one cared about him, and Joel felt that he lived a miserable life in his memory. The memory finally stopped at Dean Feeman of the orphanage. She was holding Joel, who was 5 or 6 years old, with her temples not yet grey, and smiled brightly at the camera. This was the last fragment of Joel's memory. He couldn't remember what happened before. Quirrell's wand slowly fell, and Joel was freed from the flashback. He kept gasping for breath. His head seemed to be hit hard by a blunt object. His eyes were blurry, and he felt very nauseous. It took him a while to return to normal. Your memory has been deleted, Professor Quirrell said softly. It stands to reason that legilimency can see memories that are older than this. Is there some conspiracy? Professor Quirrell smiled, with a little more satisfaction in his expression. In Joel's opinion, this look was very asking for a beating. Joel was not sure whether the memory had been deleted or not, but no matter how powerful legilimency was, it could only check the memories stored in the brain, at least from the age of remembering. Joel had lived in an orphanage since he could remember, and this spell was useless. Quirrell, or Voldemort, just wanted to explore his memory, but all this was within Joel's calculations. There's another thing that surprises me, Quirrell said. You've been in Hogwarts for 2 years, and you don't even have a single friend? Isn't that normal? Joel said, seemingly unintentionally. Who would want to be friends with someone like me? This sentence seemed to hit a point in Quirrell's heart, and he didn't say anything else. Besides, I don't need friends, Joel said with a bit of disgust in his tone. They're annoying. He even believed what he said. Some readers reported that the plot twist in the previous chapter was abrupt, so I slightly modified it to make it look more reasonable. Chapter 111, Mystery of Life, Part 2. That's not good, Joel. Quirrell's tone didn't sound like he was comforting him, but rather a bit happy. You need to make more friends. Life is not just about learning. Proper communication is essential. Professor Quirrell, Joel couldn't wait. Let's talk about my parents. Your parents. Professor Quirrell closed his eyes and pinched his nose with his left hand. That was a long time ago. You can't make it up on the spot, right? Joel came to Quirrell's office, first to ensure the smooth progress of the original plot, and second to find out the news about the original owner's parents. Quirrell opened his eyes. Do you know the Department of Mysteries? Huh? Joel felt that Quirrell's brain circuit was so strange that he couldn't keep up at all. This is a mysterious organization affiliated with the Ministry of Magic, responsible for studying various secret matters. Except for the Minister of Magic, no one knows what the people in this department are studying. The positions of the staff inside are kept confidential, and they don't even have names. They are all called unspoken. Are you saying that my parents are both employees of the Department of Mysteries? Joel frowned. That's right. Quirrell nodded. 11 years ago, your parents disappeared without a trace due to a mysterious incident. This is a rumor I heard from a friend. Many employees of the Department of Mysteries also disappeared with them. Is it true? Joel didn't trust Quirrell, although there was nothing wrong with what he said. According to Quirrell, Dean Feynman's memory disorder should be modified by someone using a spell. In this way, all the clues Joel found are connected together. Joel was stunned by the news. Then are my parents still alive? Professor Quirrell did not comment. What do you think? Joel left Professor Quirrell's office with a heavy heart. He always felt that Quirrell was lying to him. Or maybe he was too suspicious. But Joel quickly put this matter behind him. Now there is a more important thing in front of him. At 6 o'clock the next night, Joel knocked on the door of the Professor of Potions' office with the potion formula Quirrell gave him. The office is located in the corridor on the first underground floor. It is dark, damp and lightless, and looks quite gloomy. The office door was made of stone, and there was a pair of Medusa statues at the door, looking charming and attractive, with the grey snakes in their hair even wriggling. After waiting for a while, the stone door was opened, revealing Snape's expressionless face. What's the matter? After 2 years of studying potions with Snape, he had mastered the trick of guessing Snape's mood from his tone. Now Snape should be in a bad mood. Joel raised the parchment in his hand. Professor Quirrell asked me to come to you to make potions. Snape snorted slightly and glared at him with his dark eyes. Come in. He made way, and Joel quickly dodged and got in. It was his first time to come to Snape's office. The layout here was very simple, with a desk and a bookcase, and 2 small doors on the left and right of the office. The whole office was built of stone. Joel always felt that it was a bit colder here than the corridor outside. Snape led him to the small door on the left and gently opened it. Inside the door was a place dedicated to brewing potions. Most of the room was occupied by bottles and jars. The crucibles on the table were emitting smoke. Wait a minute, I'll make Quirrell's potion after this pot of living hell is done. Snape grabbed the potion formula from Joel's hand, glanced at the formula, and began to pick out the potion ingredients from the bottles and jars. Have you seen this formula? Snape squatted on the ground and took out a lively African tree snake from the jar. It was grabbed and opened its mouth to reveal a pair of sharp teeth. I've seen it, Joel responded, but I don't think the formula is complete. Snape's wand chopped down from above like a knife, and the African tree snake stopped moving. Of course it's not complete, Snape sneered. Quirrell obviously doesn't trust me, and only copied the less important part of the potion to me. He began to peel the tree snake's skin. This potion should take 6 hours to brew. Are you going to wait here? The implication was that Joel should leave his office quickly. Professor Quirrell said that the potion should be given to him when it is ready. Joel said, if I go back to the dormitory now, I won't be able to leave during curfew later. Then do as you please. Snape was in a bad mood tonight and said impatiently, peeling off the tree snake's skin and throwing it aside. Joel didn't plan to watch the potion brewing. He obediently went back out the door and found a magazine produced by the Potions Association on the bookshelf in the office. It recorded the achievements of potion masters from all over the world in the past few weeks, the improvement of various potion formulas and the simplification of potion brewing steps. Many of the contents were the first time Joel came into contact with them. He was happy to have nothing to do and leaned on the desk to read. Mr. Taylor, you seem to be too idle. Snape brought out the living hell potion and narrowed his eyes slightly. Can you help me correct the final exam papers on my desk? There are answers to the exam papers of 5 grades in the drawer. Just correct them according to them. Don't make any mistakes. Snape couldn't stand Joel's leisurely attitude. Joel felt that Snape's attitude towards him was quite gentle. If Harry came to Snape's office tonight, he would probably be ridiculed and mocked to the point of explosion. He quickly sat in Professor Snape's chair, took out the answers to the exam papers in the drawer, picked up the feather pen, and started to correct them. Professor Snape was busy brewing the potion that Professor Quirrell needed. Joel knew that Professor Quirrell did not intend to use this potion. He just wanted to use the potion to delay Snape. If nothing unexpected happened, Professor Quirrell should have entered the restricted area of the corridor on the 4th floor to steal the Philosopher's Stone, and the headmaster of Hogwarts, Professor Dumbledore, had been deceived by Quirrell to the British Ministry of Magic. What Joel had to do tonight was very simple. He stopped Snape and ensured that the original plot went smoothly. Dumbledore would always arrive, and he could just throw all the messes to him. After all, the more capable, the more work. He happily drew to crosses on a first year test paper. This guy was terrible at potion learning. Even if Joel wanted to help him find some points, it would be difficult. After checking the scores and rankings, this test paper got a T without any surprise. He couldn't suppress his curiosity, opened the sealed page of the test paper, and saw Harry's name on it. TSK. It's really bad, Joel thought. However, there were also several first year students who submitted perfect answer sheets. Hermione Granger and Draco Malfoy were the best among them. There was no flaw in their test papers, and they deserved an O. Chapter 112. Saving the Heterochromatic Tiger Cub. Joel stopped to look at the names of the second year papers when he saw excellent or very poor grades. Alan, Sergei and Joel himself all got Os, and Haley got an E, which was not bad. He finally found Eddie's paper at the back. He knew how long Eddie had prepared for this exam. He had been memorizing potions knowledge almost day and night in the days before the exam. Joel concentrated on marking the papers carefully. Halfway through the marking, he knew that Eddie's hard work was not in vain. His accuracy rate was quite impressive. Although there were a few mistakes in the last few big questions, mainly in calculations, it still did not affect his acceptable passing. It seems that Eddie can spend this summer vacation more comfortably. Joel was relieved. After marking his friend's papers, he accelerated the marking speed. A total of 5 grades, 5th and 7th grades took the wizard level exam and did not take the Hogwarts final exam, were piled up in a thick pile. At 12 o'clock midnight, Snape walked out of the room and came behind Joel with his hands behind his back. Professor. Joel glanced at the clock on the wall. Have you finished brewing? Snape's face darkened. Obviously not, otherwise I would have walked out with a crucible. It will take another 2 hours to simmer on low heat. Snape walked to the room on the right. I set the alarm to take a rest. If you have anything, knock on the stone door. After leaving the office, go straight along the corridor and you will find the bathroom. He pushed open the stone door and walked in. Joel was relieved. Quirrell would probably go to see Merlin in 2 hours. While grading the test papers, he also learned a lot of advanced potion knowledge, which was quite beneficial. Suddenly, he remembered that he had not completed a side quest, saving the heterochromatic tiger cub. The tiger cub disappeared after being captured by Professor Quirrell, but there was no failure prompt for the quest yet, proving that the tiger cub should not be dead yet. Where would Quirrell hide it? It must be a place he thought was very safe and not easily discovered by others. His own office was usually not visited by anyone, so Quirrell must have left by now. Joel glanced at the stone door on the right and left Snape's office stealthily. After casting an illusion spell on himself, Joel went back to the dormitory to pick up his luggage and treasure chest, and then successfully came to the corridor on the 3rd floor. The corridor was quiet, and the candles on both sides were burning and crackling, reflecting the red light on the armor. Joel walked to the door of Quirrell's office and knocked gently. After a long while, there was no movement. He looked around. There were no portraits except for a few suits of armor in the corridor. He tried the door again. As expected, it was immune to spells like Professor McGonagall's room. Joel pulled out the hammer of repentance from the suitcase, and then pulled out 2 thick strips of cloth and cotton, torn from the winter quilt, wrapped them around the door handle and the hammer respectively, and smashed the door handle with the heavy hammer. With a dull clang, the door handle was shaky. Joel nodded with satisfaction. After being blocked by the cloth strips and cotton, the sound of the heavy hammer hitting the office door was much lighter. Joel smashed the door open in no time and successfully slipped into Professor Quirrell's office. He didn't hesitate and ran straight to the wooden door between the 2 bookshelves. The door was not locked, and Joel pushed it open easily. This is where Professor Quirrell usually rests. The bedside table is full of garlic and purple headscarves for replacement. The stars are twinkling outside the window, and the gentle moonlight is pouring in. There is also a cage wrapped in black cloth in the corner. Joel lifted the black cloth and saw a young tiger lying inside, with its heterochromatic eyes shining in the dark night. It is much thinner than before, and its shoulder blade is very obviously protruding when it lies down. The moment it sees people, it subconsciously growls, but the sound can't be heard at all. Hush! After the young tiger saw the person clearly, the roar gradually lowered. It stretched out its tongue to lick its face, wanting to get closer to smell the smell on Joel. It didn't know what method Quirrell used. This cage can block the sound while being extremely hard. Joel could see several tooth marks and claw marks on the cage, and it couldn't scratch the cage at all. Shattered into pieces. Joel's spell had no effect. He was forced to open the window and use the levitation spell to send the cage down. The tiger cub in the cage was pushed down by the magic, and it scratched the inner wall of the cage restlessly. The cage fell lightly in the grass outside the castle, and Joel hurried out of the office and ran downstairs. Joel couldn't find a better way to dismantle the cage, so he could only place the tiger cub in the grass first. After comforting it for a long time, the tiger cub finally calmed down. It was 1 o'clock in the morning when he returned to Snape's office. Professor Snape was still resting in the room, and the potion in the crucible was bubbling. Joel calmed down to correct the final exam papers. At 1:30 in the morning, there was a knock on the door outside the office. Joel leaned over the peephole to look. Professor Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall were standing outside the door. The two looked serious. Professor McGonagall was even wearing only a fiery red pajamas, with her hair scattered on her shoulders. Professor Dumbledore. Joel knew that everything was over. He opened the stone door and saw Dumbledore's astonished eyes. "Mr. Taylor." Professor McGonagall said sharply. "Where's Severus?" Snape, who always slept lightly, put on a robe and walked out of the room after hearing the voice. "Minerva, Albus, what happened?" Dumbledore's next words made Snape's face change drastically. Quirrell was possessed by Voldemort and wanted to steal the Philosopher's Stone. Harry was seriously injured. In order to stop Quirrell's conspiracy, the four of them hurried to the hospital wing. On the way, Dumbledore repeatedly assured Snape, who had a gloomy face, that Harry's life was not in danger. Professor McGonagall pulled Joel aside and asked, "Why didn't you go back to the dormitory tonight?" "Professor Quirrell asked me to send a potion formula to Professor Snape yesterday." Joel didn't hide anything at this time, and said everything he should say. Professor McGonagall frowned. The dim light was still on in the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey was wearing a nightgown and preparing the ointment to reduce swelling. Harry, Hermione, Ron and Neville were lying side by side on the hospital bed. Hermione was still awake, but Ron had a big swelling on his head. Neville and Harry fell into a coma. Snape came forward to check Harry's body, looking more anxious than ever before, which scared Hermione and Ron. But this expression was fleeting. After personally confirming that Harry's life was not in danger, Snape returned to his expressionless face again. "Don't worry, he's just too tired and too frightened. He will be fine after taking some demulcents and getting some sleep." Madame Pomfrey comforted. Chapter 113. The Truth About My Life. "Mr. Taylor, you went to Professor Quirrell's office yesterday, didn't you?" Professor McGonagall asked, her eyebrows almost twisted together. Yes. Joel knew that Professor McGonagall was talking to Dumbledore. Sure enough, Dumbledore turned around immediately after hearing this. "Joel, can I know the content of your conversation with Quirrell?" "Of course. Let's go outside to talk." Professor McGonagall glanced at Neville and Harry who were sleeping, and lowered her voice. "Don't disturb the children." Outside the door of the hospital wing, Joel told the reason he had thought of long ago. Anyway, Quirrell was dead, and Voldemort was still running outside. No one could confront him if he made up a little lie. "You went to Professor Quirrell to ask about your parents?" Professor McGonagall was quite helpless. "What did he tell you?" "He said that my parents were employees of the Department of Mysteries and disappeared because of an accident." Joel blinked. "Is he friendly to you?" Dumbledore asked. "It's okay, but not bad." Professor Dumbledore chuckled. "Tom seems to have not discovered the truth of the matter yet." "What?" Joel felt that he might get the correct answer to his life experience from Dumbledore. "Silly child." Professor McGonagall's tone was still a little cold, but it was the gentlest words Joel had ever heard her say. "You look a lot like your mother, especially your eyebrows and eyes. Your parents caused a lot of trouble for Tom back then." Dumbledore stretched out his big hand and patted Joel on the head. "They are indeed employees of the Department of Mysteries, but they are also members of the Order of the Phoenix. The Order of the Phoenix is an organization against Death Eaters." Joel's heart was lifted up with just one sentence. The couple infiltrated the Death Eaters and provided us with a lot of top secret information, helping the Potters and Longbottoms escape Voldemort's encirclement many times. But 10 years ago, the two of them received a mission to study a certain supernatural phenomenon with other Death Eaters in the Department of Mysteries. But the mission failed, and the two of them disappeared without a trace along with 6 Death Eaters. The Unspoken. That orphanage. Joel was stunned. Your mother was very weak after giving birth to you, and she almost lost her life, Dumbledore explained. She loved you very much and didn't want to expose you to the Death Eaters. Although Voldemort trusted your parents very much, he did a lot of crazy things at the time. Your parents were afraid that your safety would be threatened, so they sent you to an orphanage, hoping that you could grow up there until Voldemort lost power, and they also changed your surname and the memory of the orphanage director. Joel squatted down against the wall. Dumbledore's palm gently stroked the back of Joel's head with a little warmth. Why does Voldemort know my true identity? Joel still felt something was wrong. You can't just rely on your appearance to guess. The last name is obviously different. Your mother changed your name for you. Professor McGonagall said hesitantly. Anyone with a keen mind can guess it. What do you mean? Joel was still in shock. Your last name Taylor comes from your mother's name. Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore looked at each other. And your name Joel comes from your godfather. I still have a godfather? Joel was stunned. Is he still alive? He is also an employee of the Department of Mysteries and died 11 years ago. Dumbledore shook his head slightly. Ah. Joel sighed inexplicably. The current situation is that the parents and godfather of the original owner of the body are all missing. Since his parents' undercover identities have not been exposed, the Order of the Phoenix and Voldemort are still quite good to him. Professor McGonagall and Dumbledore looked at each other with some worry in their eyes. Mr. Taylor, Professor McGonagall said, if you want, you can also change back to your father's surname. We can provide the necessary help. Joel shook his head, his face as usual. No need. Professor McGonagall, I think this name is pretty good. Professor Dumbledore, please follow me. I made some new discoveries in the bushes outside the castle in the middle of the night. Joel led the two professors out of the castle and found the cage in the bushes. The tiger cub was still inside, but it looked a little impatient. Oh. After seeing the tiger cub, Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. This cage is obviously Tom's work. He touched it with interest. The tiger cub was quite repulsive to this strange human being and let out a threatening growl. Very interesting. It can keep animals in it obediently, and this cage cannot be destroyed by either physical or magical levels. It seems that even sound can be blocked. Interesting. Dumbledore's eyes flashed with curiosity. That doesn't mean. Don't worry, Dumbledore said with a smile on his face. This cage is ultimately a transfiguration. I can follow the same path as Tom built it. Dumbledore walked around the cage twice. The tiger cub's eyes followed his body and crouched down to attack. It was very sensitive to the enemy's breath and could judge who posed the greatest threat to it. In its opinion, the old man with a white beard was more terrifying than the Black Hood. Dumbledore seemed to have found the trick. He muttered something and stretched out his wand to hit the cage hard, which scared the tiger cub. The cage folded up like a mechanism and finally turned into a skull with green smoke in Dumbledore's hand. Joel's mind rang with a system prompt. The side quest, saving the heterochromatic tiger cub, has been completed, and the reward is the trust of the heterochromatic tiger cub. He had just turned off the system prompt when the tiger cub that had regained its freedom jumped up, put its two strong claws on Joel's shoulders, and rubbed its big head against Joel's neck. It looks like you two are getting along well. Dumbledore originally thought that the tiger cub would attack them, but he didn't expect that the first thing it did after being rescued was to go to Joel to act coquettishly. I found it in the bushes before, and I felt sorry for it, so I went out of my way to comfort it. Joel explained quickly. But why are there tigers in Europe? Professor McGonagall, who had been standing aside, was a little puzzled. This tiger ran out of the Forbidden Forest. Dumbledore was not surprised. There are many alien species in the Forbidden Forest, and many of them are abandoned by wizards and stay in the Forbidden Forest to continue living. Then should we put it back to the Forbidden Forest? Joel said as he stretched out his hand to hold the tiger cub's head. Its tongue had a fishy smell and barbs, and it licked Joel's face. Second update. Chapter 114. Avenge the previous shame. Dumbledore looked thoughtful and moved his eyes away from the eyes of the tiger with heterochromatic pupils. It's better this way. Keeping them in captivity will wear down their animal nature. Besides, this kind of large carnivore consumes a lot of food every day. I think so too. Joel pressed the tiger's head down hard. It's also very clingy. Joel struggled repeatedly and finally made the young tiger understand what he meant. The three of them sent the tiger to the edge of the forbidden forest. It looked back every few steps and looked at Joel with tears in its eyes. Finally, it disappeared into the jungle with its tail swaying. Joel was forcibly sent back to the tower by Professor McGonagall. He slept for 3 hours in a daze. In order to prevent himself from thinking too much, Joel also used brain block control to control it and ensure the quality of his sleep. The next morning, Joel sat up from the bed with panda eyes, yawned and stretched, and lifted the brain block, and the mess in his mind came up. Joel rubbed his temples. He was not that interested in the family background of the original owner of the body. Most of the time, he was just curious. But this body did not agree. After learning about his life experience, Joel's heart would always be inexplicably stirred. The original owner of the body was obviously dead. Why was he still making trouble here? Joel was unhappy, but he also knew that he had occupied someone else's body in vain, and he could not blame others. After silently repeating "I have nothing to do with it" 100 times in his heart, he finally calmed down and took out a school robe to change into. The last Quidditch match will be held this morning. Ravenclaw vs. Gryffindor. This match will determine who will be the winner of this year's Quidditch Cup. Before the game started, the Ravenclaws learned that Harry Potter would be absent today due to injury. Roger Davis' cheeks flushed with excitement. "Don't be careless. Apart from Potter, the Gryffindor team is not weak." He said this to each player. "As long as we win by 20 points, we will be the champion." Eddie twisted his shoulders and did warm-up exercises. The 7 Quidditch players were full of fighting spirit. Potter was injured. This was a great opportunity for them to win the championship. Today they must wash away all the previous shame. The Gryffindors were frustrated and lost. Harry, who they had high hopes for before the game, could not play. Captain Wood had to send the substitute seeker to play. They knew that this year's Quidditch Cup was getting farther and farther away from them. At the beginning of the game, the Ravenclaw team showed a good suppression power. Under Eddie's organization, they approached the Gryffindor goal. Their attack was tight and left no chance for the Gryffindors. Fighting aggressively was the traditional advantage of Gryffindor, but they could not take advantage of Ravenclaw's iron bucket formation. 15 minutes later, the Ravenclaw team was far ahead with 80:0. The substitute seeker was so nervous that he couldn't even hold the broom, let alone catch up with Pipi Xie, who was known for his speed. The Gryffindors in the stands looked at him. They had no hope of winning now, but they just didn't want to lose too badly. The Ravenclaw players didn't think so. They made full use of every offensive opportunity to score another 10 points for their team. The Gryffindors had no chance to counter-attack in front of the airtight pressure attack. To be honest, in terms of physical fitness and flying skills, the Gryffindor team was not inferior to the Ravenclaws, but they lost in mentality and tacit understanding between the players. Except for the Weirlight win several beautiful shots that briefly blocked the Ravenclaw's attack, the Gryffindors didn't even have a decent cooperation and were suppressed unilaterally. On the other hand, Eddie, as the tactical core of the Ravenclaw team, connected the whole team, while Roger observed the offensive formation of the chasers of the two teams on the flank to make adjustments at any time. Ravenclaw made full use of its strengths and defeated the Gryffindors in an hour-long game. Pipi Xie discovered the golden snitch early, but she also wanted to avenge her previous shame and avenge last season with a more exaggerated score. At the moment she caught the golden snitch, the whistle blew to end the game. The final score was 360:10. Gryffindor only got 10 points, and it was because of Roger's foul. The Ravenclaws in the stands hugged each other excitedly. In just one season, they transformed from the last to the top of the league. Everything was as dreamlike as a dream. No student would look down on Ravenclaw's Quidditch. They used practical actions to prove that Ravenclaws also have outstanding talents in sports. On the court, the 7 members of the Ravenclaw Quidditch team stood in a circle and held up the Quidditch Cup, which symbolized honor. After 13 years, they once again left the mark of Ravenclaw on the Quidditch Cup. It was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon when the award ceremony ended. Ravenclaw students gathered in the common room to play and celebrate. Hayley was generous and spent dozens of galleons to order snacks and butterbeer at the 3 Broomsticks. When they were having fun, some people danced in the middle of the common room, and there were students cheering beside them. Joel didn't like this noisy environment, so he took a bottle of butterbeer and sat down in the study area. The soundproofing spell here was excellent, and Joel felt his ears were much quieter. He opened the bottle cap and took a sip. His eyes swept over the people in the common room and then automatically focused on Hayley. She was no longer as young and shy as when Joel first met her. Instead, she chatted and joked with the senior students around her. It was just that her slightly flushed cheeks made Joel sure that all this was a fake, which made her look even more lovely and attractive. The 3 roommates also came over together. Eddie didn't look happy, but rather a little depressed. "What's wrong?" Joel bumped him with his shoulder. "Are you still so unhappy after winning the championship?" "No." Eddie sighed and took a big gulp of butterbeer. "I'm worried about the test results tomorrow, especially the potions. If I get another T." Eddie sighed, and Alan on the side hurried to comfort him. "Don't be like this. Didn't you successfully brew the cold potion? As long as the score on the paper is too low, Professor Snape will definitely not give you a T. I think I must have made mistakes in the last few big questions on the test paper." Eddie was worried. Ahem. Joel coughed twice, and after the 3 roommates cast their eyes on him, he said, "I was in Professor Snape's office early this morning to help mark the test papers, including Eddie's." "What's the result?" Alan opened his eyes wide, and Sergei, who was calm on the side, also hurriedly took a sip of butterbeer. Joel looked Eddie in the eye and said, "I looked over the answer several times to make sure you got a passing grade on the paper." Eddie's face flushed red, and he took another big gulp of the drink. The cool feeling went down his throat and into his limbs. "Alan, thank you, thank you." He hugged his roommate tightly. The 3rd update. Chapter 115. Photos. Alan showed his classic innocent smile and hugged Eddie's shoulders tightly. Sergei silently took a big sip of the drink and handed a stack of coins in his hand to Joel. "Please help me take the money to Selwyn when you come back." Joel knew that, no matter how much he persuaded Sergei, he would not take back the money, so he simply took it. Eddie was excited when he learned about his potion results. He ran back to the dormitory to get a deck of cards and taught them how to play blackjack. The next morning, Professor Flitwick came to the bulletin board in the common room with the hot report cards. The Ravenclaw students were waiting on the sofa early, and they immediately pounced on the 5 long report cards. Joel found the 2nd year report card at the bottom of the bulletin board. The first one was not him, nor Sergei, but Hayley. Except for in potions, her grades in other subjects were all low this year. Sergei failed in history of magic and herbology, and his grades were not ideal. Joel's weaknesses were in astronomy and history of magic. The 2 of them only got E in these subjects. Fortunately, they performed well in other subjects, helping them to maintain their joint 2nd place. Eddie was still the last in Ravenclaw this year, but his grades had improved steadily compared to the previous school year. He did not get a single T, and he also got an O in herbology. His progress was quite obvious, and he temporarily got rid of the crisis of repeating the grade. "Joel, come out with me." Professor Flitwick, who had just posted the report card, called Joel with his hands behind his back. Outside the door guarded by the eagle-shaped door knocker, Flitwick smiled and stretched his hand out from behind. He was holding a photo frame with a magic photo in it. The little man on it kept moving with Professor Flitwick's fingers, as if he didn't want to be pressed by his fingers. "This is..." Joel took the photo frame. "Professor McGonagall told me." Professor Flitwick tried to lower his voice. "This is a photo I found. Your parents are in it. Come and see." Professor Flitwick was now only as tall as Joel's shoulders, and he stood on tiptoe awkwardly and hugged Joel towards the window. "This is a group photo of the 1974 Ravenclaw graduates. The couple standing together are your parents." Professor Flitwick tapped the photo with his fingers, and the little people in the photo quickly dodged, making room for Joel to take a closer look at the couple in the middle of the photo. They were wearing Hogwarts bachelor's gowns, with their bachelor's hats slightly tilted. They held hands, and leaned against each other's shoulders. At first glance, it was obvious that they had a close relationship. The two smiled brightly at the camera. Professor McGonagall was right. The original owner of this body was quite similar to his mother. Her thick brown hair covered her side face like waves. She had a slender figure, delicate and beautiful features, and when she turned her head to look at her boyfriend, there seemed to be stars in her eyes. The father was tall, with a pair of glasses tilted on his head and a scruffy beard. He looked unkempt, with a deep and calm gaze. They both had excellent grades, and in their 7th year, a research report on runes had already won several international awards. Flitwick said with deep emotion. After graduation, they were hired by the department of Mr. Is as rune consultants at a high salary, and have since kept their identities secret, no longer revealing their real identities. Keep this photo. Professor Flitwick looked up at Joel, just as a keepsake. Thank you, Professor. Joel hugged the photo frame in his arms. Professor Flitwick smiled and patted Joel on the back. By the way, Professor, you said before that my parents were hired by the department of Mr. Is with a high salary? That's right. Professor Flitwick nodded. With their theoretical research level, it is impossible for them to work there if the Ministry of Magic does not offer a high enough salary. Then, Joel seemed a little embarrassed. Do you know who is keeping my parents' inheritance? Professor Flitwick frowned. Inheritance. After your parents disappeared, all information and property should be protected by the British Ministry of Magic. Joel nodded, and there was one more task for this summer vacation. This inheritance must be quite a lot, and it is absolutely impossible to leave it to the Ministry of Magic. Of course, Joel is not so shameless. He took someone else's body and took their inheritance. He doesn't mind finding out the reason for the disappearance of the original owner of the body as much as he can, just as a small compensation. After the results were issued, the house scores of the 4 colleges were also counted. Relying on 3 wins in Quidditch games and excellent performance in the final exams, Ravenclaw College successfully won the first place. Quidditch Cup plus House Cup. Prefect Catelyn hurried up from the scoring gems downstairs. We Ravenclaws will have such a day. The Ravenclaws were now excited, but Joel was not very happy. He knew that Dumbledore would add hundreds of points to Gryffindor House at the end of year banquet tomorrow, making it the winner of the House Cup. After a sleepless night, Joel and his classmates arrived at the auditorium on time the next evening. The auditorium was full of blue and bronze representing Ravenclaw. A huge banner with a Ravenclaw eagle was hung on the wall behind the teacher's seat. Dumbledore was in high spirits and seemed to be in a good mood. He stood up and stretched out his arms. The content of his speech was similar to last year until the House Cup was awarded. Dumbledore read out the scores of the 4 houses. Ravenclaw, 492 points, Slytherin, 411 points, Hufflepuff, 353 points, Gryffindor, 332 points. The Ravenclaw table erupted in earth-shaking cheers. This will be the 2nd consecutive year that they have won the House Cup. Dumbledore interrupted them with two coughs. Like last year, we also have some points to distribute. As expected, Hermione and Ron won 50 points for Gryffindor respectively, and Harry won 60 points for his direct confrontation with Professor Quirrell. The final blow was made by Neville Longbottom. There are many kinds of courage. Dumbledore smiled. We need superhuman courage to deal with enemies, and it also takes great courage to stand firm in front of friends. Therefore, I will reward Mr. Neville Longbottom with 10 points. The Ravenclaw table was silent. They never expected that Gryffindor could add 170 points and surpass them in an instant. The cooked duck flew away when it was close to their mouths, which made the Ravenclaw students very angry. Some uncalm students even knocked on the tableau on the long table to express their dissatisfaction. Gryffindor played the role of the king who won the reversal. The hall was decorated with a new look. A fiery red Gryffindor lion flew out and roared, driving away the Ravenclaw eagle on the banner. Now it was Gryffindor's turn to be proud. The crowd rushed forward to hug Harry and directly drowned the thin Harry in the crowd. The cheers flew through the hall and into the sky. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116. Good night. After the end of year dinner, the Ravenclaw students returned to the common room with a lot of resentment. Hailey even bought candy and snacks early, waiting to hold a celebration ceremony when she came back in the evening, but she didn't expect that everything would be in vain. Go back to bed quickly, Catelyn, the prefect, forced a smile. We don't need this house cup. But we have worked hard for a year. A first-year student wiped her tears. We dare not violate the rules, behave well in class, and have such good test scores. We even won the Quidditch championship. Why can't we win the house cup? Caitlin knew that the first-year students who had just entered Hogwarts must be unbalanced. She hurriedly comforted them, and finally persuaded the students to go back to the dormitory. She put her hands on her waist and sighed at the empty common room. She waved her wand and cleaned up the candies on the table. "Let me help you," a soft voice sounded. Caitlin turned her head and looked. It was Hailey. She lowered her head and felt indescribably uncomfortable. Caitlin knew what Hailey was thinking and went forward to rub her black hair. "It's no big deal. Don't take it personally." Hailey nodded, waved her wand, and took down the balloons hanging in the air. Caitlin was tidying up the drinks and snacks on the sofa and the table, and finally filled a large basket and handed it to Hailey. "We have to take the train all day tomorrow, and we must be tired and hungry." Hailey didn't take it. "Why don't we just let everyone take some when we leave in the morning?" Caitlin nodded in agreement, and the two girls cleaned up the common room and turned off the crystal chandelier above their heads. "Aren't you leaving?" "I'll go back to the dormitory later. I have something to tell him." After the dinner, Joel did not return to the dormitory immediately, but came to the teacher's seat and stopped Dumbledore. "Did you encounter any difficulties?" Dumbledore was friendly. Now the two of them were standing in a remote place in the corridor on the second floor. There was no one around. It was a good place to talk. "Professor Dumbledore, I want to know if my parents left me some items." Joel crossed his hands. "Like photos, real estate, etc. I heard from Professor Flitwick that the management rights are in the hands of the Ministry of Magic." Of course. "You deserve it," Dumbledore responded. "If nothing unexpected happens, your parents should have left you a lot of things. Their salary is not low." Dumbledore thought about the itinerary and said, "The day after tomorrow morning, I will take you to the British Ministry of Magic to help you get your inheritance back." After thanking Professor Dumbledore, Joel returned to the tower. It was about the end of the semester, and the eagle-shaped door knocker would usher in 2 months of loneliness. The question it asked tonight was particularly tricky. You are standing on flat land, and suddenly a wall appears in front of you. It is infinitely high upwards, infinitely deep downwards, and infinitely far to the left and right. What does this wall represent? Joel began to think after hearing the pleasant sound of the eagle-shaped door knocker. This question is quite abstract. He thought about it for a long time, but could not get an answer. "Can you change the question?" he discussed with the knocker. This was the first time he couldn't answer a question asked by the knocker. "I'm leaving school tomorrow, so don't embarrass me." "No, if I'll let you go, who will chat with me?" The eagle knocker said the cruelest words in the most pleasant voice. According to the description in Hogwarts, A History of the School, the eagle knocker is a high-level alchemy item made by Ms. Ravenclaw. The voice and thoughts are highly consistent with her. Joel originally thought that she was a cold and arrogant lady, but he didn't expect that she would torture people. "Don't torture me." Joel became more and more impatient as he thought about it. Could it be Professor Dumbledore's shield charm? The eagle knocker didn't move at all. Obviously, this was not the answer to the question. The door suddenly opened, and Haley's head popped out. Stumped by the question, Joel nodded. "Coming quickly." Haley opened the door. "Knocker, can you tell me the answer to the question?" Joel half stepped into the common room and turned around to ask. "The answer is death." The eagle-shaped door knocker assumed its aloof attitude, and there was no explanation for just saying the answer. Joel walked in, thinking, Unfortunately, I noticed that you didn't come back with us, so I stayed here to wait for you. Otherwise, you might not be able to come in any time. Haley's eyes looked bright and moving in the dark night. Is there anything you want to discuss? Jill asked. That, I want to tell you that I have thought it through. Haley twisted her hands around her waist for a moment and said boldly, I like you, and I will never regret it. Joel looked at Haley's slightly nervous face, and his full of emotions could not be suppressed quietly. He sneaked away and left a shy blush on her face. She must be different from him. Joel remembered Haley, who was generous in front of everyone that day, and now the shy girl was like two different people. He chuckled. Coincidentally, it's just as I thought. Haley raised her head, and a beautiful arc appeared at the corner of her mouth. Good night, my dear boyfriend. I wish you a good dream. Haley's originally plain face now looked bright and dazzling. Every word of this sentence seemed to have turned around twice in her mouth, and her voice was soft and tender. Good night, my dear girlfriend. Joel's heart was so excited that he almost jumped out of his body. He looked at Haley's cheeks, which were as bright as jade under the moonlight, like white rabbit toffees. Joel suddenly had this thought in his mind. Haley's facial features were not amazing, but they were just right. The slightly raised eyebrows and the straight nose looked a little aggressive. When she didn't smile, she was quite cold. When she smiled, two dimples appeared, which made her look cute and charming. I wish you a good dream too. Joel couldn't help but touch Haley's face. Soft and delicate, the skin seemed to be made of milk. A little force would leave a red mark on it. Joel couldn't help but try it. Don't. Haley pouted in dissatisfaction and pushed Joel's hand away. Go to bed quickly, she urged, waving goodbye to Joel. Joel was relieved when he saw her walk into the girls' dormitory. He gently stroked his chest, and his heartbeat reminded him that everything just now was so real. This was Joel's first love in 2 lives. When he returned to the dormitory and lay on the bed, he was still very excited. He tossed and turned and couldn't fall asleep, which annoyed Sergei, who always slept lightly. Joel, who was scolded, had to use brain closure to force himself to calm down before he fell asleep. The 5th update. I can't bear it anymore. Dear readers, let's make a deal. Can I add 2 more chapters tomorrow for the one I owe? My waist is almost broken. Chapter 117. Homeward Journey. 4,000 chapters. The next morning, Alan walked into the bathroom with disheveled hair and sleepy eyes. He saw Joel with a happy face, humming a little tune while brushing his teeth. Why are you so happy? Alan squinted. Really? Joel tilted his head and saw that his face in the mirror was still handsome and dazzling. The corners of his lips could not help but bend upwards, with a smile on his face, and his whole face was much softer. People are refreshed when they are happy, he muttered. What happy event? Alan shook his head while brushing his teeth, wishing to shake off all the toothpaste foam. Had Isles agreed to be my girlfriend? Joel did not hide it. Puff. Alan spit out the water in his mouth and coughed violently. His face flushed red. Is it true? Why would I lie to you? Joel put the tooth cup away and turned on the faucet to wash his face. It happened last night. Alan's eyes widened, and he ran out with toothpaste foam hanging from the corners of his mouth without brushing his teeth. A minute later, Eddie and Sergei, who were lying on the bed, also learned the news. Sure, you too, Eddie teased. How old are you? And you're already in love. Aren't you and QIU the same? Joel sat on the bed packing his luggage, glanced at Eddie, and retorted. Eddie shut his mouth and said nothing. Joel stuffed everything he needed to take into the small suitcase and left the dormitory with his roommates, locking the door. Owl Poppy was saying goodbye to Serge's snowy owl Caesar. If nothing unexpected happened, they would meet again in 2 months. When they arrived at the common room, the wide space was full of students. Joel saw Haley in the crowd at a glance. She was standing in the line of second-year students and chatting with QIU next to her. Haley soon found Joel among the boys. She waved to Joel with a smile on her face. There was no way. Her boyfriend was too outstanding. Joel came forward with a suitcase to greet them. QIU nudged Joel with her elbow and said, Haley told me this morning. Congratulations. Haley glanced at Joel's profile. Her cheeks flushed. After the relationship breakthrough, she could finally look at his pleasing face boldly and without scruples. After a while of laughing and joking, they finally got on the Hogwarts train to London. Joel did not sit with his 3 roommates this time, and they voted to kick him out of the box. According to Edda's words, "I can't stand Joel sitting on the chair with a silly look on his face. He looks like a fool." He was forced to carry the suitcase to join Hailey. She was sitting with her brother Bernie. Compared with Christmas, Bernie was fatter and still talked a lot, but Hailey didn't listen to her expression. She was reading a book Unknown Spells with relish. Joel knocked on the door gently. Hailey turned her head and saw his face, the corners of her mouth slightly raised. She immediately put down the book in her hand and went forward to open the door. "Where's QIU?" Joel walked in with a suitcase. She and Merita went to the next box. Hailey whispered, "Bernie is too noisy. The two of them can't stand it." Joel knew what was going on. He put the suitcase away and sat opposite Bernie. "Good morning." Bernie reacted very strongly. "Why are you, a pretty boy, here again? Why are you always getting close to my sister?" "Bernie." Hailey put down the book in her hand, and a hint of impatience flashed in her black eyes. "He is my boyfriend. I know he is your friend, but you two have to keep your distance," Bernie said to himself, and then he reacted and looked at Hailey with surprise. "Sister, how come you and him?" Hailey walked to Joel and stretched out her hand to hold his arm. "Understand?" She looked at her brother. My. Bernie was incoherent. "Sister, why do you like a gigolo like him? Did my sister pay you back the pocket money she borrowed from you last time?" Bernie was angry. 2,000 galleons. That was saved up by my sister with great difficulty. "Bernie." Hailey's face flashed with shame and anger, and her neck exposed outside the robe was also stained with a touch of pink. "Joel paid me back the money just after the Christmas holiday, and he made tens of thousands of galleons more." Bernie's forehead wrinkles appeared in surprise. Joel knew that Bernie had always regarded him as a gigolo who was trying to get close to rich girls like Hailey, so he simply opened the suitcase and revealed the purse inside. Although the suitcase was cast with a traceless extension spell to be enough to hold all the gold galleons, for safety reasons, Joel only kept 10,000 galleons, and the rest of the galleons were stored in the system panel for future use. But these golden galleons have successfully blinded Bernie's eyes. He grabbed a handful of gold galleons from the suitcase. After confirming that it was not a trick of the Irish leprechauns, they are good at distributing fake gold coins to deceive wizards, he opened his mouth in surprise. "How do you make all this money?" Bernie stepped forward and pulled Joel's sleeve. "Can you teach me? I want to make money too." Joel and Hailey looked at each other. "What do you make money from?" Hailey asked in confusion, frowning. "Isn't the pocket money your parents give you enough?" After both children entered Hogwarts, the Selwyn family, one of the 28 pure-blood families, naturally would not be stingy. The galleons earned by the family from generations of business in the magic world are not as much as Malfoy, but it is also a considerable amount. Hailey can get hundreds of gold galleons in pocket money a month, and Bernie is the same. Hailey knew that her brother was always lavish with money, but there were not many places to spend money in school. She also helped buy a Nimbus 2000. Logically, Bernie should not be short of money. "Oh." Bernie waved her hand. "Sister, don't ask me. How can you ever make enough money?" Bernie shook Joel's arm, his eyes full of desire. "Joel, don't pay attention to him. Let me handle it." Hailey pulled Bernie's hand off Joel. "You know the complete solution of CLBT magic course, right?" Hailey coughed twice and looked at her brother. "I know." Bernie scratched the back of his head. "We are still using it before the final exam. It is really helpful for a view." Bernie blinked, his chubby face full of seriousness. "Sister, don't interrupt me. I really want to make money and want to ask brother Joel for advice." 2 minutes ago, he was still calling him a little white face, but now he called him brother. "This was made in Joel's dormitory," Hailey said with a sense of pride and a sense of satisfaction for revealing information that others did not know. They were just in the first grade at that time. Bernie was dumbfounded. When Dumbledore awarded them the Order of Merlin last year, Bernie had not yet gone to school. Usually, the most discussed topics were the things of the same grade in college, and they did not know much about other people's things. Joel also got the 3rd class Order of Merlin with this set of teaching materials. Hailey laughed. Father only has a second-class medal, which is much more valuable than a gold galleon. If you can get an order of Merlin, I will buy you whatever you want. Haley said, don't think about making money. The money at home is enough for you to spend. If you spend too much, you can ask your parents for it. She didn't want Bernie to indulge in money. The Selwyn family could provide him with generous material conditions. He should focus on more meaningful things. After all, Bernie will become the head of the Selwyn family in the future. Okay. Bernie was a little dissatisfied, but under the pressure of his sister, he still agreed obediently. He left the cubicle on the pretext of going to the toilet, and finally left some space for Haley and Joel. What are you going to do in the summer vacation? Haley put the book on the table and rested it on her elbow. Professor Dumbledore will accompany me to the British Ministry of Magic tomorrow. My parents left some property there. Joel said. Your parents? Haley knew that Joel grew up in an orphanage. They are not. Joel only told Haley that his parents used to work in the Department of Mysteries. Because of an accidental disappearance, they concealed the relevant matters of Voldemort and the Order of the Phoenix. Haley patted Joel's back gently to comfort him. I plan to look for a house in the next 2 months, so that I can use it in my daily life after the holidays. Joel said. Are you going to buy a house in the magic world? Haley was quite interested in this topic. I think so, Joel shrugged. I'm not yet an adult. It would be very troublesome to buy a property in the Muggle world. There are many types of properties in the magic world. It depends on whether you plan to live in the countryside or in the city. Haley was quite knowledgeable and told Joel about it. If you want to buy a house in the city, it's okay in the suburbs. It's not impossible to build a duplex villa. Most of the high-rise buildings in the city are built by Muggles themselves. It's just that the Ministry of Magic will use some means to erase your resident information from the Muggle world. This is the worst choice. The conditions in the countryside are much better. You can choose any village in the UK and build a house. This project can be contracted to the Ministry of Magic. As long as they can make money, they will do anything. Haley said a lot. I advise you to choose a wizard village. Otherwise you have to pay attention to hiding your identity at all times. How about Godric's Hollow? Joel asked. This is the most famous village in the original work except Hogsmeade. The climate there is pleasant, and you can go hiking and sightseeing in your spare time. There are also many wizards who live there. Haley pondered for 2 seconds. Last year, I saw that the land price was quite moderate. It will definitely increase in the future. If you want to buy it, I suggest you buy it as soon as possible. How do you know so much? Joel was a little puzzled. You also know about real estate? Well, Haley flicked her long hair. My father usually knows some land information. You know, he is also in the real estate business. When I was a child, I was exposed to a lot of real estate knowledge. If you plan to buy a house, remember to write to me, Haley said. I can help give you some advice. Joel and Haley are in the period of passionate love now, and their words and actions make Bernie very annoyed. Just after 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Qiu Zhang pulled Haley into his compartment, saying that he wanted to choose 2 dresses, but couldn't make up his mind, so he asked Haley to help him with some reference. Bernie and Joel were the only ones left in the compartment. Bernie coughed softly with his right fist, a smile on his face. Brother Joel, do you have any wealth code you can reveal? Aren't you afraid that I will tell your sister? Joel closed the spell book of Haley. Don't think about making money at such a young age. Studying hard is the key. You are different from me. I have a system to make money and learn new knowledge. What is our relationship? Classmates. Joel choked back mercilessly. If Haley didn't show that meaning before, Joel wouldn't mind thinking of some ways to make money for Bernie, but since his girlfriend said so, he would definitely not disobey. Hey, are you and my sister going to get married in the future? Bernie sat next to Joel and said earnestly, if you two get married, wouldn't you be my brother-in-law? Tell me, why do you want to make money? Joel was annoyed by him, but his face remained calm. Tell the truth, otherwise I won't help you, he added. Well, Bernie smiled awkwardly. It's mainly because I'm a little tight on money. I heard from Haley that you have a lot of pocket money on weekdays. Joel was puzzled. How can there be so many places to spend money in Hogwarts? Bernie sighed. It's mainly because my roommate Malfoy's daily expenses are more luxurious than mine. The tooth cups he usually uses are all inlaid with gold. I just want to make more money and improve the quality of life. I didn't tell my parents about this, Bernie pouted. If I told them, they would definitely give me a lot of money and then tell the Malfoys about this at the noble banquet. The Malfoys would tell little Malfoy and then little Malfoy would laugh at me. Is that so? Joel recalled the scene when Bernie grabbed Haley's arm and acted like a spoiled child and insisted on asking for an Nimbus 2000 when they first met. At first, Bernie's desire to buy it was not so strong, but Eddie went in and bought one first, which aroused Bernie's comparison mentality. I think he has been spoiled by his family since he was a child, and he wants to pursue the best in everything. Bernie, he pondered for 2 seconds, turned around and said seriously, your competitive mentality is very unhealthy. What's the point of competing with others for such a luxurious material life? You are only 11 years old. Can't you do something else with this time? Just to save face? Joel shook his head. I won't teach you any way to make money. Bernie bit his lower lip tightly, unwillingly. TSK, forget it if you don't want to talk. I can think of a way myself. After that, he sat back in his original position, leaned his head against the window, and closed his eyes to sleep. Joel knew that Bernie didn't take what he just said to heart. He planned to wait for Haley to come back and tell her the truth. After all, they are 2 siblings, and the communication effect should be better. Today, I will only update 4,000 words. There are too many things at work. I came back at 8 o'clock. I just finished typing it now. I will make up for the missing words tomorrow. Don't worry. Chapter 118, Travel to the British Ministry of Magic. Joel didn't find a suitable opportunity until the train arrived at the station. Bernie had been sitting by the window sulking. He could only wait to write a letter to Haley to explain the situation. Speaking of letters in the magic world, we have to mention the magical owls. They claim to be able to send their owners letters to any corner of the world and find the recipient. This statement is not accurate, except for a very small number of owls with poor professionalism. I'm talking about you, Ron's owl Piglet. Most owls can remember their owners' homes and some landmarks, such as Hogwarts Castle. Of course, they can also recognize familiar recipients, but they have no way to find the recipient. For example, Joel had booked the Daily Prophet for a year, but suddenly had to take a ferry to France in the morning. Would the newspaper's owl chase him? Of course not. The impatient owl would return with the newspaper. Of course, Joel could also write a letter and send his own owl to pick up the newspaper. The process would be more troublesome. Owls are only very sensitive to the direction of their owners. As long as they are hungry, they have various ways to find their owners and ask them to feed them. Joel left the address of the leaky cauldron to Haley, and after the train stopped, he and Bobby followed the crowd out of platform 9 with their suitcases. He saw Eddie hugging his parents with a smile on his face, and a feeling of envy surged in his heart, sour and bitter. This situation has happened frequently since he learned about the parents of the original owner of his body. This feeling is familiar and unfamiliar to Joel. The last time this feeling appeared frequently was after his parents divorced in his previous life. This is definitely not good news. Joel seems to be unable to control his body. The memories and emotions left by the original owner of the body are still affecting him. Obviously, the soul of the original owner of the body has dissipated. Why does he still have such emotions in his heart? Joel thought for a long time, but couldn't figure it out. He quickly sealed up all his doubts in his heart, took a taxi to Charing Cross Road, and the sunset gradually fell. The fiery red light stung Joel's eyes. This street is world famous because of the American writer's novel 84 Charing Cross Road. It was summer vacation, and there were many tourists visiting the street. It was very noisy and lively. Joel paid the fare with the change left from Reselling Gold during the last Christmas holiday. He carefully squeezed through the tourists and slipped into the leaky cauldron, which was under a muggle-repelling charm, while no one was paying attention. The bar was still dark and quiet. Joel felt cool and pleasant as soon as he entered. Tom was still leaning on the bar and wiping his wine glass as usual. There were not many wizards in the store. Only a few people passed by here when they entered and left Diagon Alley. Stay in the hotel? Tom raised his eyes and took a look when Joel approached. Uncle Tom, I'll pay for a week's rent first. Joel smiled. Room 11 is empty, right? Of course not. Tom put down his glass, took out the key to room 11, and handed it over. You're only staying for a week. I'm short on money. Joel shrugged. I may not be able to pay too much at once. Kid, I can reduce the rent appropriately. Tom hesitated and said, you know, the room upstairs is empty anyway. Joel was a little surprised, but he still refused. He was not really short of money, so he naturally couldn't accept Tom's favor. He was never a person who didn't repay a favor. He had to pay it back, and then there would be a lot of trouble. Back in the familiar room, Joel arranged everything properly, and then let the owl Bobby out for a walk. It had been holding it in for a day, and couldn't bear it anymore, so it flapped its wings and ran out. Joel took out 2 chocolate frogs from his backpack. As soon as the package was opened, a flame appeared in the room out of thin air, which looked very much like the sunset that Joel saw today. The flames shrank into a ball in the air, and 3 seconds later the flames disappeared. A note fell down, with a little ash effect around it. It was really showy. Joel knew that this was Dumbledore's unique way of sending letters with the help of the Phoenix Forks. He unfolded the note and saw a row of scribbled words. I will arrive at the Leaky Cauldron at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Joel breathed a sigh of relief, stuffed the chocolate frog that wanted to jump out of the wrapper to gain freedom into his mouth, and chewed it with a crunch. At 7 o'clock the next morning, Joel woke up on time. After washing up, he went downstairs to have breakfast. Uncle Tom's cooking skills were still poor. The bread was hard and rough, and even the mushrooms were half cooked. After filling his stomach, Joel went back upstairs and picked up the suitcase. There were tens of thousands of gold galleons in it. He had to carry it with him, which was not very convenient. He planned to deposit the money in Gringotts after receiving the inheritance. When he got downstairs, he saw Dumbledore already standing there. He was wearing a moon-white robe, with a white beard hanging down to his waist, and was chatting with Tom, the bar owner, with a smile on his face. Ah, Joel, you're on time. Dumbledore saw Joel on the stairs, and waved to him. Good morning, Professor Dumbledore. Joel came forward to greet him. How was your breakfast? Dumbledore asked with a smile. I don't think you would like the breakfast made by Tom. I had a meal here 10 years ago, and it almost broke my teeth. Tom laughed heartily, and Dumbledore took Joel to a McDonald's on the street without saying anything. I want a cup of McCafe with more sugar and creamer. Dumbledore rushed to the counter as soon as he entered the door, and a cheeseburger with eggs. Joel, what do you want to eat? Dumbledore looked at Joel. Anything. Eat well before you can go on your way. Joel sighed, without pointing out the ambiguity of Dumbledore's last sentence, and just ordered a cup of coffee. Joel could see that Dumbledore wanted to come to McDonald's on purpose, and he enjoyed the most of the breakfast. After eating the burger, he took a sip of coffee filled with milk and sugar, and squinted his eyes with satisfaction. The sweetness is just right, and the temperature of the burger is just right. The cooking skills of the Muggles are still worthy of praise. When Dumbledore said this, Joel couldn't help but twitching his eyebrows twice. He just saw the way to pour 3 packets of sugar into this cup of coffee, which is absolutely sweet to the taste of normal people. Have you finished eating? Let's go now. Dumbledore took Joel out of the fast food restaurant. I freed up a whole morning. That should be enough. Hold my hand, Joel. In a deserted alley, Dumbledore stretched out his rough and dry hand, and the moment Joel touched it, the space twisted and turned, sucking the 2 of them in. Chapter 119, Legacy, Part 1. The world spun around for a while, and when Joel came to his senses, he and Dumbledore had landed on the shiny dark wooden floor. The peacock blue ceiling was inlaid with glittering golden symbols, which kept moving and changing, like a huge bulletin board in the sky. The walls on all 4 sides were inlaid with dark wood boards with shiny black paint, and many gilded fireplaces were embedded in the wood boards. The decoration style was gorgeous and solemn. Every few seconds, with a light buff, a wizard suddenly appeared from a fireplace on the left-hand side, and on the right, there were several people queuing in front of each fireplace waiting to leave. They were in a hurry, holding a copy of the Daily Prophet in their hands. Many of them were in plain clothes, mostly black or white robes, and a small number of people were in beige uniform robes with an M logo representing the Ministry of Magic on their chests. Those are from the Law Enforcement Department. Dumbledore led Joel forward along the flow of people. The strikers who hunt down common criminals and the auras who track down dark wizards will wear this kind of clothes. They are of a higher rank than ordinary employees. Won't these clothes be conspicuous? Joel followed Dumbledore and watched the strikers and auras in beige clothes walk into the fireplace with their heads held high, as if they were going to carry out a mission. If they act at night, won't these clothes make them sitting ducks? According to common sense, it would be more reasonable to decorate these characters who need to perform camouflage and stealth missions with black or camouflaged colors for ease of movement. The beige robes of the strikers and auras are not only easy to get dirty, but also very easy to expose themselves. Joel couldn't understand what the designer was thinking. Dumbledore didn't know how to answer Joel's question. Maybe they have their own considerations. They walked through the long corridor and entered the entrance hall. The first thing Joel saw was a banner hanging in the air on which was painted the current Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge. The length of the banner was no less than the one when the College Cup was awarded in the hall. Under the banner, many wizards were just reading newspapers. Wow. Joel couldn't help but sigh. Cornelius always likes to play this trick. There was no praise or criticism from Dumbledore. Not long after entering the entrance hall, a fountain stretched across the center of the hall. A group of pure gold statues stood in a circular pool. Joel estimated that the statues were taller than Yao Ming. Standing in the C position was a noble wizard. He raised his wand and pointed it to the sky. Joel almost mistakenly thought that he was going to summon the nine heavens' mysterious thunder and guide it with his wand. Surrounding the wizard was a beautiful witch, a centaur, a goblin and a house elf. The centaurs, goblins and house elf all looked up at the wizards and witches with admiration. Sparkling streams of water spurted out from the top of the wizard's wand, the centaur's bow and arrow, the goblin's hat, and the house elf's ears. This is the fountain of magical brotherhood. Dumbledore introduced it to him patiently. You can throw some coins into the pool, and the proceeds will be donated to St. Mungo's Hospital for magical maladies and injuries. Is this made by a wizard? Joel glanced at the statue in the fountain again. To be precise, it should be an arrogant wizard. I have never heard of centaurs and goblins expressing admiration for wizards. Joel, sometimes you have to understand the demands of various interest groups. Dumbledore took him to a row of golden doors. Each group has a different position, and the actions and works they create are also completely different. These are all very simple truths, including us taking over your parents' inheritance today. The same principle applies. They did not pass through the golden door, but came to a wooden table, where a middle-aged wizard was sitting. Good morning, Albus, the wizard said sleepily. Bringing a child? Yes, to see Cornelius. Dumbledore motioned for Joel to hand over his wand. Joel handed over his wand without much hesitation. It was the Vinewood wand. Familiar with the original plot, he was well prepared. The wizard threw it onto a brass scale. The weight of the wand pressed the scale to the other side, but the slightly higher scale tray slowly spit out a note like a printer. 11 inches, Vinewood with dragon heartstring, used for 2 years, right? The wizard yawned. Yes. Hearing this, the wizard returned the wand on the scale to Joel. Dumbledore took Joel through the gate and into a smaller hall, where there were dozens of elevators, surrounded by golden fences. It was rush hour, and the two waited for a long time before getting on an elevator with few people. It was not unusual for the staff of the Ministry of Magic to greet Dumbledore. Judging from their age, even Cornelius Fudge was Dumbledore's student. 5 minutes later, they finally arrived at the minister's office on the first underground floor. The lobby was located on the 8th underground floor. The corridors here were empty, and there were only 2 offices in the huge space. Joel was sharp-eyed. When he passed by, he saw a sign of Logistics Department hanging on the door of the office near the elevator. Dumbledore took him all the way inside and came to the innermost office. He knocked on the wooden door gently and got a response from the man inside, and then he pushed the door open and walked in. A gray-haired man was sitting in an office chair flipping through the documents in his hand. When he saw Dumbledore open the door and walk in, his face immediately overflowed with a bright smile. Joel had seen his portrait in the lobby, the current Minister of Magic, Cornelius Fudge. He stood up to greet Dumbledore. Minister Fudge was not tall, probably half a head taller than Joel. When the two hugged, they just bumped into Dumbledore's collarbone. "Dear Albus." Fudge's tone was exaggerated. "Are you here today to do something that needs my help?" "Not me, Cornelius," Dumbledore said in a deep voice. "It's this child." Fudge seemed to have just noticed Joel, who had been following Dumbledore. "Who is this?" Fudge was a little puzzled. "Joel Taylor, sir," Joel answered. "He is the child of the Meadows couple," Dumbledore said, looking at Fudge's thoughtful face. "It's the Meadows you are thinking of, Cornelius." "Albus, what are you doing with him?" Fudge, who was touched by the heart, said incoherently. "His parents disappeared 11 years ago, but the inheritance they left behind has been detained by the Ministry of Magic until now." Dumbledore took out his wand and conjured a chair for himself and Joel. "He is now of school age, and it's time to return the inheritance to him." Fudge pursed his lips, and the smile he had before was completely restrained. He now looked more like a politician. "Excuse me, Dumbledore, he can't get the inheritance now." Chapter 120, Legacy, Part 2. "Corneli, can you tell me the reason?" Dumbledore said with a smile. Fudge's lips trembled. "The estates of the missing persons have not been reviewed yet, and some of the information may be related to the accident that year. I have to wait for the director of the Department of Mysteries to check and confirm that the estates are absolutely free of any confidential documents before I can return the estates to their relatives." Fudge sat back in his chair. "How long will it take?" Dumbledore asked softly. "It hasn't been confirmed for more than 10 years. Fudge coughed twice. "Well, I have only been in office for a year, and I don't know what happened before. If you want to ask, you have to go to the former minister, Ms. Millicent Bagno. Besides, how can this child prove that he is the child of Mr. and Mrs. Meadows?" Fudge seemed to have found a loophole, and his eyebrows were flying. "What did I just hear you say? Joel Taylor. He has nothing to do with Meadows." Joel saw that Fudge was making excuses and didn't want to hand over the estate of the original owner's parents to him. Mr. and Mrs. Meadows changed his first and last name. "That's not a problem, Cornelius." Dumbledore saw the doubt on Fudge's face. His voice was still calm. "I can go back to Hogwarts to find the Pen of Acceptance and the Book of Admission. Joel's magic is quite outstanding. I guess he was written in the Book of Admission by the Pen of Acceptance when he was born, and his original name was left at that time." Fudge didn't expect this. He hesitated and kicked the ball. "Let's talk about it after the director of the Department of Mysteries has finished the inspection. Then let's go to the Department of Mysteries on the 9th floor underground first." Dumbledore didn't insist and took Joel out the door directly. When he turned the door, he suddenly said, "Cornelius, I hope the director won't let me come back to find you again." Fudge heard a hint of threat in Dumbledore's words, and his body shook twice involuntarily. After the door of the office was closed, Fudge immediately stood up, walked around the office twice with his hands behind his back, then gritted his teeth and made a decision, picked up the round hat on the table and walked out. The elevator clanged down, and Joel's eyes flickered, and his heart beat up and down. "Don't worry," Dumbledore seemed to see through Joel's thoughts. "You will get your parents' inheritance. This is my promise. Just consider it as compensation for what I owe you all these years." Dumbledore sighed. Joel understood what he meant. After his parents disappeared, the original owner of the body lived in an orphanage for 10 years. During this period, the Order of the Phoenix did not take care of him. Dumbledore's move was also to come for Joel. They went all the way down to the 9th floor underground. It was far away from the ground, and the temperature was even lower than upstairs. Joel, who was wearing a single robe, had goosebumps on his arms. "Is it always so cold here?" Joel crossed his arms and hugged his shoulders. He walked out of the elevator and came to the corridor. The coldness became stronger and stronger, as if it was going to penetrate his skin into his blood. He had no choice but to take out his wand and cast a warming spell on himself. This spell not only consumes a lot of magic power, but also has a strange effect. When it acts on a person, there will be a burning sensation, and it cannot be used as a thick coat. "In most cases, it is like this," Dumbledore replied. There are many things in the Department of Mysteries that need to be frozen and sealed. Even if they are sealed well, there will be air leakage. Most of the unspoken people wear thick robes to work, even in the hot summer. In front of him was a simple corridor with a black door at the end of the corridor. Dumbledore pushed the black door open and took Joel to a huge roundhouse. The roundhouse was about 200 square meters. The ceiling, floor, and walls were all as black as ink. Joel felt that his soul was about to be sucked away at a glance. 12 identical black doors without handles were evenly embedded in the surrounding black walls at a distance from each other. In addition, there were some candles with blue flames dotted on the wall. The cold and weak candle light was reflected on the bright marble floor, making the floor look like a pool of black water. There were 2 people chatting in the round room. When they saw Dumbledore, their first reaction was to shut up. The sparse voices suddenly stopped. "Professor Dumbledore, you are here." A young man about 30 years old came forward and asked, "Where is your director?" Dumbledore asked, "Corneli asked me to find him." "I'm Eugene Greengrass, the director of the Department of Mysteries," the young man said with a thin and gentle face. "Do you need any help?" Dumbledore repeated the story. "The accident 11 years ago." Eugene pushed his glasses and looked back at his subordinates. "Go and retrieve the files of Mr. and Mrs. Meadows." After his subordinates pushed one of the black doors and left the round room, Eugene turned around and said, "Wait here for a while. We will talk about this matter after he gets the files." After that, Eugene paced around the round room by himself, turning a feather pen in his hand quickly, with a thoughtful look on his face. "What is he doing?" Joel asked Dumbledore beside him. It should be that they encountered some mysterious and inexplicable phenomenon. People in the Department of Mysteries are always like this. They seem mysterious to outsiders, but only they know what they are thinking. He responded softly. Not long after, Eugene got the file. While listening to his subordinates' reports, he read the file carefully, his face solemn. Something may have happened in the middle. Eugene's calm face was slightly disturbed. 11 years ago, the inheritance of the Meadows couple was entered into the Ministry of Magic for inspection, but a year ago, the inheritance was taken away. What's going on? Dumbledore frowned, and Joel beside him felt that things were getting more and more strange. Eugene shook his head. "I don't know either. Not long after I graduated from Hogwarts and joined the Ministry of Magic, I went to the United States Magical Congress for exchange work. I was transferred back here to serve as the director half a year ago. If you want to find out, you still have to go to Minister Fudge." Eugene took out a piece of parchment from the file. It was a transfer approval letter. There was a stamp of the Minister of Magic at the end of the letter, and Cornelius Fudge's beautiful cursive signature below. Dumbledore's face darkened. Fudge had obviously lied to him before. Joel followed Dumbledore's stride to the minister's office on the first floor underground again. As soon as they left the elevator, a short and fat woman in a pink shirt, pink pleated skirt and pink hairpin stopped them. "Albus," she said in a pretentious voice that could make people sick, "are you here to see Cornelius? He left for Northern Ireland half an hour ago." Oh. Joel sighed in his heart. He didn't expect that he would meet this woman in advance. Dolores Umbridge, the then Deputy Minister of Magic of the British Ministry of Magic, a very unpleasant character in the original book. Dumbledore narrowed his eyes. "Dolores, I'm very happy to see you here. You said before that Cornelius Fudge had left." "Yes." Umbridge showed a sweet smile. "He also specifically notified me to wait for you here." "I understand." Dumbledore took a deep breath. "Let's go, Joel. It seems we have to find another way." Dumbledore was obviously angry. He took Joel and left without looking back. In the elevator, Dumbledore glanced at Joel, who was bowing his head and not saying anything. He thought he was sad. "Don't worry, we can find Cornelius later." He tried to make his tone gentler. "I have many ways and I will definitely fulfill the promises I made." "Thank you, Professor Dumbledore. It's really too much trouble for you." Dumbledore stretched out his big hand and gently rubbed Joel's head. "Don't." Joel shook his head and shook off Dumbledore's palm. "Professor, didn't anyone tell you not to rub a child's head?" Dumbledore was stunned for a moment. "Why? Will it not grow taller? It will make you bald." Joel said with resentment. He has been in the UK for 2 years and found that the water quality here is extremely poor. Every time he takes a shower, he can always collect a small strand of hair. The same is true for his roommates. This makes Joel have a strong sense of crisis about baldness. He now pays great attention to protecting his fragile hair. It would be bad if I became Satoma teacher after traveling through time with such a handsome face. You are so young, and you care about this issue. Dumbledore wondered. He reached out and touched the back of his head. He was over 100 years old and his hair was very thick. The long hair on both sides hung down to his waist along with the white beard. It is necessary to prepare for a rainy day, Joel replied. The elevator came to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement on the second underground floor. A group of people walked in. Among them was a red-haired wizard with his back to Joel. There was a large bald spot on the back of his head where his hair was rotating, and it was about to turn into a Mediterranean. Dumbledore laughed softly. Albus. The red-haired wizard turned his head when he heard the familiar laughter and came over excitedly. Are you here to work at the Ministry today? This is Arthur Weasley, working at the Ministry of Magic. Dumbledore introduced Joel and the two shook hands. Dumbledore avoided Mr. Weasley's questions with a brief introduction and asked about his family situation instead. It's better now, Mr. Weasley said happily. When my youngest daughter Ginny goes to school this fall, the family will be more and more well off, and Charlie and Bill's salaries are not low. Dumbledore also smiled and agreed. The elevator quickly landed in the lobby on the 8th floor underground. Dumbledore took Joel out of the golden door and returned to the entrance hall before he apparated away with him. They returned to a narrow alley on Charing Cross Road again. Dumbledore took out a fiery red bird tail feather from his arms with a little bit of deep black at the tip. He put the feather on the ground, took out his wand, pointed it at the feather and muttered something. After chanting a long spell, the feather suddenly rose to the air and burst into dazzling flames and disappeared in the air. Okay, hold on to my hand. Dumbledore stretched out his left arm. In 5 seconds we will stand next to the minister. Joel put his hand on it, and the world spun again. The feeling of weightlessness wrapped around his body and disappeared on the spot. The surrounding scene changed rapidly and finally stopped in a restaurant where Dumbledore and Joel stood in front of a table and Cornelius Fudge was sitting at his seat enjoying a steak sandwich. Dumbledore. Fudge's reaction was not slow. He stood up quickly and was slapped back by Dumbledore. Corneli, Dumbledore said with a smile. What did I say before? I hope I won't come back to see you later. But the director of the Department of Mysteries told me that the transfer letter of the estate has your signature, Albus. Fudge changed his address, and he said with a smile, is there any misunderstanding between us? If you return the Meadows estate before sunset today, there will be no misunderstanding between us. Dumbledore looked at Fudge with his lake blue eyes. If you can't do it, there may really be some unnecessary conflicts between us. Fudge was sweating coldly. No problem. The Meadows estate will be returned immediately. He originally wanted to delay some time and find 2 excuses to stall Dumbledore, but he never expected that Dumbledore actually knew where he was. Joel was observing the restaurant from the side. There were photo frames hanging on the walls around. The people in the photo frames kept moving, and there was also a photo of the Quidditch team. It was not yet the peak lunch hour, and there were not many customers in the restaurant. A waiter came over. Do you need any help, sir? Dumbledore pressed Fudge's shoulder to prevent him from escaping, and smiled and shook his head at the waiter. Corneli, I will sit here with you today, Dumbledore said in a low voice, sitting on the chair opposite Fudge. When the inheritance is returned, you can return to the ministry. Fudge sighed and picked up the wand on the table. Dumbledore raised his eyebrows. I'm not running, I just want to send a message. Fudge explained. Expecto Patronus. A ball of silver mist formed in the air, and a silver-white lynx emerged from the mist, jumping around Fudge. Tell him to quickly return Meadows' inheritance intact. Fudge ordered in a hurried voice, and the silver-white lynx seemed to understand what he said, and circled twice in the air before disappearing. Let's go back to the Ministry of Magic, and talk about this slowly. Fudge saw that Dumbledore would not give up until he achieved his goal, and knew that if he didn't finish this matter today, he would have no chance of working. 5 hours later, Joel finished his 10th cup of tea and looked at the clock on the wall. It was already 3:50 in the afternoon. Fudge was processing some documents sent by the members of the ministry. His brows were furrowed, and the quill in his hand looked more like a random scribble to Joel, and his mind was obviously not on the documents. Dumbledore sat in the chair calmly, looking very patient. Joel couldn't stand it anymore. He ran directly into the toilet in the minister's office under the pretext of urinating. When he came out after urinating, there was a man sitting on his chair. About the pen of acceptance and the book of admission. Excerpt from Pottermore. The pen of acceptance will write the names of all children who are born with magical talents in the book of admission. As the supervision of the pen of acceptance, the book of admission will refuse the pen of acceptance to write his name on it unless it receives sufficient evidence that a person has magical abilities. Therefore, this book ensures that no squibs are admitted to the school. The decision made by the book of admission and the pen of acceptance is final. There has never been a case where a child was admitted to Hogwarts, but his name was not in the yellowed pages of the book of admission. Wizards who have had the privilege of witnessing the book of admission and the pen of acceptance at work believe that the pen of acceptance is more lenient than the book of admission. Even a hint of magic is enough to make the pen of acceptance tempted, but the book of admission will not allow the pen of acceptance to write a name on it unless there is sufficient evidence. Since the book of admission records the name and date of birth of every wizard child, it can tell people who will enter Hogwarts to study and when. Professor Minerva McGonagall checks this book every year and sends admission letters to children who are about to turn 11 by owl, inviting them to school. Chapter 121, Legacy, Part 2. He was tall, sitting on a chair, about the same height as Dumbledore, with his light blonde hair combed meticulously, holding a gilded snakehead scepter in his hand, and his white robe decorated with complicated gold threads. He had an arrogant expression on his face, and turned his head to look at Joel, as if he was looking at an annoying fly. "Is this the child of Meadows?" The man snorted coldly. "He looks a bit like that stupid couple. Lucius." Dumbledore tapped his fingers on Fudge's desk. Fudge, who was sitting opposite the two, raised his eyebrows uneasily. "We don't need to reminisce in the minister's office, right? Return the inheritance of the Meadows couple, and that's it." Dumbledore made his request. "Dumbledore, is this child worth your fuss and waste of a whole day?" Lucius Malfoy asked softly, looking at Joel with disgust in his eyes. It seems that the relationship between the original owner's parents and Lucius Malfoy is extremely stiff. "Joel is my student," Dumbledore responded. "He should get his share of the inheritance. You want to embezzle it? Of course, I will stand up for justice. 10 years ago, you started to play tricks and swallow up the inheritance of other families that died in the battle," he continued. "If those families don't have clear heirs, you can take advantage of legal loopholes, but the Meadows couple are employees of the Ministry of Magic. They disappeared while performing tasks for the Ministry of Magic. The Ministry of Magic should treat their descendants well. Am I right, Mr. Minister?" Dumbledore threw the topic to Fudge again. Fudge wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. "Yes, our Ministry of Magic has an obligation." Lucius's eyes moved between Dumbledore and Fudge, and finally glanced at Joel. Joel could read strong hatred from this contemptuous look. "Okay," Lucius said in a sinister voice, "the Malfoy family will remember this." After saying this, he stood up and left the office. Joel couldn't understand why Malfoy was so self-righteous when he had clearly seized the inheritance of the original owner of the body, as if Joel had taken advantage of Malfoy. Suddenly, a house elf appeared out of thin air in Fudge's office. Its short and thin body was covered with an old pillowcase, with bat-like ears, a slender nose like Pinocchio, and big green eyes bulging outward. A grey cloth bag that was larger than its body floated beside the elf, and the bag was bulging with things. It put down the grey cloth bag, then bowed deeply to the three wizards present, snapped its fingers, and disappeared with a snap. "These are the relics of your parents." Fudge smiled again and called Joel. "Come and have a look." He seemed to have forgotten the unpleasantness of this morning, and treated Joel as if he were a familiar junior. The contrast between his attitudes before and after could be called such an opera face changing. Joel didn't pay much attention to it, squatted down and untied the grey cloth bag. A photo album, a diary, several robes and skirts, some cosmetics and toiletries, a wallet, and the rest were piles of books, probably hundreds of them, and the weight was amazing. There should be a key to Gringotts' vault in the wallet, Dumbledore said. The goblins at Gringotts will ask you for the password and the owner of the vault after receiving the key. Don't worry, I'll contact Gringotts right away. Fudge immediately took over the topic. I guarantee that Joel can go directly into the vault tomorrow. After getting the inheritance, Dumbledore finally let Fudge go. Fudge sent Joel and the other two out of the minister's office, and he breathed a sigh of relief when he closed the door. Professor Dumbledore, thank you very much, Joel said in the elevator. It's no big deal, Dumbledore said with a smile. I can afford a day. You should know how to get to Gringotts, so I won't accompany you. No problem, Professor. Joel agreed quickly. Dumbledore took Joel back to the room on the second floor of the leaky cauldron with a cloth bag. Before he apparated away, Joel could finally calm down and sort out the inheritance. He opened the wallet, which contained some coins and £2. As Dumbledore said, there was a copper key in the wallet. He took out the key and put it in his pocket, then put the wallet aside. 2 black plain robes. Joel compared the size. The size was slightly larger but not exaggerated. He remembered the photo that Professor Flitwick had given him and judged that it should belong to the mother of the original owner of the body. 2 floral dresses. Judging by the craftsmanship, they should be produced by Muggle machines, and Joel even saw the Lancome logo in some other cosmetics. The books and the inheritance, it is more appropriate to call them scrolls, with a simple appearance and yellowed pages. Many of the scrolls are missing pages, and the entire text of the scroll is written in runes. Joel has seen this kind of text in the magic textbook. Runes cannot be taken until the 3rd year, so Joel plans to bring all these books to school and study them carefully. There is only one diary left, which is not very thick. The black cover looks plain and unadorned. There is a faded date below the cover, September 1942. Joel opened the first page and found a cursive signature. The ink is blurred because it is too old. Joel must read it carefully. Tom Riddle. After Joel recognized the handwriting, he was afraid that he had read it wrong. He read it carefully 3 or 4 times. After confirming that it was correct, he immediately closed the diary. His heartbeat increased sharply. Joel knew that this was Lucius's doing. Originally, Riddle's diary should have been put into Ginny's crucible by Lucius because of a conflict. Now he took the opportunity to take revenge and stuffed it into the inheritance of the original owner's parents. Lucius Malfoy didn't know that the diary was a Horcrux, but he knew that the diary was a dark magic item. The magic on it could reopen the Chamber of Secrets. It was a 2 birds with 1 stone move. It disrupted the order of Hogwarts, took the opportunity to drive away the headmaster Dumbledore, and framed Joel for the disaster. If Joel was a native of the magical world, he might have really fallen into Lucius's trap, but he was familiar with the original plot and knew the true face of the diary. He simply sat cross-legged on the bed and thought. There are 2 very important points in the Chamber of Secrets copy. One is Riddle's diary, and the other is the basilisk in the Chamber of Secrets. The diary controls people's minds to come to the entrance of the Chamber of Secrets, opens the Chamber of Secrets with Parseltongue, releases the basilisk, and causes certain casualties. Harry then uncovers the fog, and uses Parseltongue to enter the Chamber of Secrets, killing the basilisk, and destroying the diary. In this copy, the basilisk is far less harmful than the diary. As long as the diary is destroyed, there is no Parseltongue to open the Chamber of Secrets, and the basilisk will never come out. The question now is who will be the one to destroy the Horcrux. Joel first excluded himself. His current situation was very safe. Voldemort didn't know the true identity of his parents. The people of the Order of the Phoenix treated him very well. Even if Voldemort found a physical body and resurrected, he would not encounter any trouble. If he rashly destroyed the Horcrux, it would naturally arouse Voldemort's hatred. At that time, even if his parents were Death Eaters, they could not save him. Otherwise, find a way to give the diary to Ginny? Follow the original plot. It's not impossible. Joel just needs to survive until Voldemort dies, and everything will end perfectly. But does this count as pushing Ginny into the fire pit? Joel couldn't make up his mind for a while. Although Ginny was the first owner of Riddle's diary in the original book, the world he is in now is not exactly the same as the original book, and many of the contents have quietly changed. At least from the perspective of the current plot of this world, Ginny will not have anything to do with this diary. This is obviously different from the history of magic copy. Quirrell, Voldemort, had already set his sights on Harry at the time, so Joel only needed to maintain a non-action approach. Lucius has obviously changed his target of blame now. If he gave the diary to Ginny, at best, it was to follow the original plot and not break it, but at worst, wouldn't it also be a blame? Joel sighed. He went to bed very early today, and his dream was full of Ginny's innocent smile. The next morning, Joel walked through the leaky cauldron to Diagon Alley. After crossing an alley, he came to Gringotts again. He took out the key. The Goblin of Gringotts had obviously received the notice and just asked the owner's name, and then asked the Goblin to take Joel to the underground vault. Sitting on the cart, sparks and lightning all the way. 10 minutes later, Joel finally saw the vault. The moment the Goblin opened the door for him, he was blinded by the gold galleons. Here, how many gold coins are there in total? Joel's heart was pounding. 21,000. The Goblin reported the number, mostly from interest and the return of royalties from the Meadows couple. 21,000 galleons, about the same as his net worth. Interest? Joel was a little puzzled. If I keep the money in Gringotts, will I get interest? Of course not, the Goblin said in a serious tone. You must sign a commission agreement, so that we at Gringotts will take the gold you deposit here and invest it, and then pay you interest. In fact, this investment is very safe. The Goblin tried to persuade Joel to keep the gold galleons after realizing that Joel was a potential customer of Gringotts. Gringotts has existed in the world for hundreds of years. We provide investment and financial services to tens of thousands of wizards. We goblins have always been very trustworthy. I'll think about it. Joel didn't agree first. This deposit of tens of thousands of galleons couldn't be used to recharge the system, but he could use it for other things. The purchase of real estate and daily expenses could all be diverted from this money. The Goblin did not ask any more questions. Joel took out the gold galleons and deposited them into his account along with the 9,000 galleons he had on him, leaving only 1,000 galleons for backup. Joel got his key to Gringotts at noon. It happened that Haley sent a letter asking about his recent situation. Joel explained the truth, but ignored the notebook that Lucius stuffed into the inheritance. In his reply, he asked Haley to help him refer to the house. One day later in the evening, Haley sent a stack of information and asked Joel to compare it carefully. She made an appointment with him to meet at the leaky cauldron at 8:30 the next morning. Joel received the letter, fed Bobby who was exhausted, and then lay on the bed to study the rune phonetic table by the light. 2 hours later, the runes became crooked, like black snakes drilling into his eyes. Joel finally couldn't resist the tide of sleepiness and fell asleep in a daze. When Joel woke up in the morning, he moved the rune chart covering his body away, turned over and got out of bed. He first faced the morning sun outside and pointed at his heart to recite the Animagus training spell, and then went to wash up. He could feel another power gradually forming in his body at sunrise and sunset recently. He estimated that the Animagus form would be completed soon. There was only a storm left. He deliberately didn't eat breakfast today. Joel was fed up with Tom's cooking skills recently, so he and Haley could go to the restaurant outside. At 8:15, when Joel went downstairs, Haley had already arrived and was standing at the bar chatting with the boss Tom. She was wearing a white dress, revealing only a small part of her delicate ankles. Her black hair was spread out like seaweed and fell to her shoulders. She was holding a white sun hat in her hand. Haley saw Joel coming downstairs and smiled. "Good morning." "Morning," Joel responded. "Didn't you have breakfast?" Haley shook her head slightly. Joel took her to the fast food restaurant. After a hamburger and a drink, Joel felt full of strength. Haley felt that the breakfast here was too greasy, so she only ate a potato grid, and then she held her chin with her hand and looked at Joel. After breakfast, Haley took out the palm-sized bag she carried with her and took out a map from it. "Look, we are going to these places today." Haley took out a pen and connected the lines on the map. "Yesterday I circled several cost-effective residential areas: Godric's Hollow, Hogsmeade Village. Our nearest route is like this. We will rest in Hogsmeade Village at noon, and we can go to the Three Broomsticks to drink 2 bottles of butterbeer." Haley planned the route last night. She took this opportunity to go out and play for a whole day, so she didn't have to endure Bernie at home. The two stretched out their wands in the alley and got on the night bus. 15 minutes later, they successfully arrived at Godric's Hollow in the southwest of England, which is the most famous half-wizard settlement in the UK. It is the birthplace of Godric Gryffindor, one of the founders of Hogwarts, and the current headmaster Albus Dumbledore also grew up here. This place is engraved with the names of ancient wizard families, and it is not an exaggeration to call it a legendary place in the British wizarding world. Joel and Hayley stood in the small square in the center of the village, staring at the war memorial in the center of the square. In the eyes of muggles, this is a plain war memorial, but in the eyes of Joel and Hayley, this is a statue of three people: a man with messy hair like a hedgehog and glasses, a woman with long flowing hair and a beautiful face, and a baby boy sitting in his mother's arms. Chapter 122, Disputes Caused by Nimbus 2001, Part 1. This was built by wizards to commemorate the outstanding contributions made by the Potter family in the fight against the mysterious man. Hayley said softly, "They are really brave." Joel looked at Hayley's delicate profile. "When death comes, few people will make a generous move to protect others," he murmured. "Many times cowardly people will even transfer the danger to others to keep themselves safe." He was mocking his idea a few nights ago, to give Riddle's diary to Ginny, so that she in this world would suffer an unexpected disaster, so as to ensure the continued development of the plot and seek safety for herself. Hayley noticed that Joel was a little depressed. She thought Joel was talking about Sirius Black, who leaked the hiding place of the Harry Potter couple, so she didn't care, but just turned sideways and hooked Joel's palm. "Come with me, I'll take you to the open space in the village." Joel felt a smooth and warm mass in his hand and looked down. Hayley's white jade-like hand was in his hand. Joel, who was in love for the first time in his lives, felt his heartbeat speed up, and there was an itchy feeling in his heart. The blood kept rushing up, making his cheeks red. He was dazed and was pulled to the edge of the village by Hayley. Godric's Hollow has been developed almost completely in recent years. Now is the best time to buy. If you wait 2 years, you can only buy a house halfway up the mountain. Hayley introduced him and held a brochure in her hand. There are 2 types of wizard houses in Godric's Hollow. You can buy a vacant land or an old house. In fact, it is also a piece of land. You can tear it down and rebuild it, or move in directly. Everything can be handed over to the real estate company in the Ministry of Magic, Hayley said proudly. As long as you are willing to pay, they can solve all problems. This house. Joel stared at the White House in front of him. It was a 2-story building with a large area and a garden. The geographical environment was also quite good with the hillside behind it. "You have good vision." Hayley turned into a real estate agent at this moment. The previous owner is going to take his children to study in the United States and plans to auction this piece of prime land. You can buy this piece of land for only 4,000 galleons, including the furniture, fences, flowers, and plants in the house. The master bedroom faces the sunny side. You can see the first ray of sunshine in the morning by opening the curtains every morning. Hayley took out the key from her handbag, opened the door, and walked into the house with Joel. "Wait." Joel finally reacted. "How do you have the key to the house?" Hayley stuffed the brochure in her hand to Joel. He took a look. It was an introduction to the house. It can be seen that Hayley had read it from the brochure before. Joel finally found the trick. The contact information at the bottom of the brochure was Selwyn Real Estate Company, 55 Diagon Alley. "This is. The owner of the house sold the property to my family first." Hayley opened the window and let the hot summer breeze outside blow on her face. She closed her eyes slightly. "You didn't read the information I mailed to you yesterday carefully, did you? It clearly has the contact information of the selling company." Joel scratched his head with a guilty conscience. He was busy looking at the rune phonetic table last night and didn't pay attention to the pile of real estate information at all. "I think this house is pretty good." He changed the subject, "and the price is fair." With the sunlight, he could see the fine hairs on Hayley's ears. Of course, Hayley was a little dissatisfied with Joel. She crossed her arms and snorted twice. "I even specially greeted the people in the company and asked them to waive your handling fee this time." Joel hesitated for a moment and said, "No, this won't work. You still have to make money." Just charge as much as the industry standards. This is not the Gwazi used car direct sales website in the previous life. There are no middlemen to make a profit from the difference. The economic environment of the magical world where Joel lives is extremely simple. In this case, the middlemen cannot survive without taking commissions. No need. Haley leaned against the window, tilting her head to look at the garden outside the house. I've already told you in advance, just pay if you like it. How can that be? Joel said confidently. If your family knew about this, I don't know what they would think of me. How can I face them in the future? If Bernie knew, he might scold me for taking advantage of your family. Haley blushed for a moment, then responded in a low voice, if you are willing to pay, pay it. The handling fee is not cheap. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Joel walked around the house, and the more he looked, the more he felt that it suited his taste, and he wanted to sign the contract immediately. No, Haley objected with a puffy face. Compare 2 or 3 more places before making up your mind to buy. What if there is something more to your liking? She insisted on dragging Joel to compare prices, and walked all the way until noon. They finally finished looking at 4 plots of land, and took a break at the 3 broomsticks in Hogsmeade. Joel rubbed his numb calf, and looked across the table at Haley, who was drinking butterbeer with a calm face. She was wearing a pair of white high heels. How could she be better at shopping than him? Joel could only attribute it to the special talent of women. We have looked at all the plots of land. Now we can make a decision. Which one do you like? Haley lifted her legs and took out the detailed information of the 4 plots of land she had looked at in the morning from her handbag. Her handbag had also been cast with a traceless stretching spell, and the surface was decorated with a few pearls. It was clear from the appearance that it was expensive. The one in Godric's Hollow is pretty good, Joel said, perhaps because his first impression was too deep. He couldn't forget the White House. 4,000 galleons isn't expensive. Well, I'll have someone prepare the contract when I get back this afternoon. Haley shrugged. The land will belong to you after that. I suggest you clean up the garden. I saw a goblin's nest in it this morning. The 2 ordered 2 bottles of butterbeer and some snacks, and finished their meal in the bar. Haley accompanied him for a whole morning. Joel, who had a high-ek, naturally wouldn't let his girlfriend go home directly. He took Haley to Diagon Alley. While she was sitting in a cold drink shop eating ice cream, he went to Fengire clothing store to buy a pair of black mid-heeled leather shoes. Well, wearing high heels at a young age will cause foot deformation and affect development. Joel glanced at Haley's feet in high heels. If you want to look taller, wear these mid-heeled shoes. I know. Haley opened the gift and took a look. Her eyes narrowed into crescents, looking cute and well behaved. Aren't we going to choose elective courses at the beginning of the school year? Joel asked. Have you decided what to study? I will definitely choose Muggle Studies, Haley answered first. She hasn't decided on the rest of the courses yet. Why did you choose Muggle Studies? Joel wondered. Haley's cheeks flushed. I want to know more about the world you lived in before, and I want to have more common topics with you. I have also made up a lot of Muggle novels in the past 2 years, such as Pride and Prejudice and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Haley lifted her hair from her ears. The Muggle world is quite interesting. These words moved Joel so much. Haley was a little shy after she said her girlish thoughts, and her eyes wandered around the street. Suddenly, she saw a familiar figure. Why is Bernie here? She put on her sun hat and walked out, and Joel hurriedly followed behind her. The 2 of them found Bernie in front of the window of the Quidditch boutique, where he was standing with Draco Malfoy. Just as Haley was about to catch up, Joel stopped her. He remembered what Bernie had said on the trip back to London during the summer vacation. What? Haley frowned and looked back at her boyfriend. Don't rush out. Joel pulled her into an alley. The 2 of them leaned out of the alley so that they could see and hear everything that happened in front of the window. See what they are going to do. Haley glared at him. Bernie told his parents today that he was going to study management at the company. How did he get together with Malfoy? What's wrong with Malfoy? Joel felt puzzled. Haley crossed her arms and looked disdainful. He is just a dandy boy who relies on his father. He will mention my father and my mother every 3 sentences, and then start to show off how much money his family has. Everyone in the pureblood family circle knows his virtues. Before Joel could reply, the conversation between Malfoy and Bernie in front of the Quidditch boutique had reached their ears. "Shopkeeper." It was Malfoy's voice, still with that arrogant tone. "How much is this Nimbus 2001? The clerk had been working on the front line of sales for a long time, and his sharp eyesight allowed him to tell at a glance that the robe Malfoy was wearing was very valuable, and that he was obviously a potential customer for high-end brooms like this. He immediately said respectfully, 800 galleons, my dear sir." Before Malfoy could even speak, the clerk fully demonstrated his professionalism. "Don't think that the Nimbus 2001 is 300 galleons more expensive than the launch price of the Nimbus 2000, but it's absolutely worth the money. Let me put it this way, the Nimbus 2000 can no longer keep up with the Quidditch trend, and the footrests, seat cushions and broom tail hoop of the Nimbus 2001 have been fully upgraded to give you the most comfortable flying experience. At the same time, we have improved safety protection and speed." Malfoy was not interested in listening to the whole story of the Nimbus 2001. He glanced at Bernie standing beside him and cleared his throat to interrupt the clerk's introduction. 7 brooms. Malfoy waved his hand and pointed a number, which made the clerk very happy. "All of them will be credited to the Malfoy family account." He called Dobby, and the elf who had brought the inheritance appeared again out of thin air. He was still wearing an old pillowcase and was dirty. He lowered his head desperately and handed forward a cloth bag with both hands. "Here, take it and count it." Malfoy raised his head high and pointed his nose at the clerk. "Pack all 7 brooms for me and have your manager deliver them to my house this afternoon. Dobby, follow him and don't let him have any bad intentions." Dobby bowed deeply again and made a sharp voice. "Dobby understands what the young master means." The clerk took the purse and immediately ran into the store. This large order of 5,600 galleons could multiply his bonus this month. Although the little Malfoy's attitude was a bit arrogant, people always have to eat. Seeing Dobby rushing into the Quidditch boutique with the clerk, Malfoy retracted his gaze and put it on Bernie. "I remember what broom you bought last year." Malfoy clicked his tongue twice. "Nimbus 2000? That's not a good idea, Selwyn," Malfoy said slowly, with a bit of mockery on his face. "Didn't you hear what the clerk said just now? Nimbus 2000 is no longer in line with the trend of Quidditch." Malfoy imitated the clerk's voice perfectly. "Don't you consider getting a new broom?" Bernie's chubby face was full of embarrassment. If he had just entered school, 800 galleons would not be difficult to pay, but after competing with Malfoy for a whole school year, Bernie followed Malfoy to buy a lot of luxury goods, and had already spent all his savings. He only had more than 100 galleons left, and he still had to buy books and cauldrons for the school year. Even if he spent all his pocket money from the beginning of school to Christmas, he couldn't afford this Nimbus 2001. "It's okay." Malfoy obviously saw that Bernie was short of money, and he smiled pretending to be magnanimous. "If you don't have money, just say so. Not every child can get so much money from their parents to buy a broom. Although the Selwyn family is not poor, there are only a few who spoil their children as much as my father does." Malfoy patted Bernie's sturdy shoulders. "Do you know why I bought 7 Nimbus 2001s? I bought one for each of the starting players of the Slytherin Quidditch team." Malfoy showed a smug smile on his face. "As long as you can join the team's starting lineup after school starts, you will also have a share of the 7 brooms. Your father doesn't love you. It's okay. I still have me. As long as you agree to be my little brother, like Goyle Crab, I can give you little things like flying brooms. You should know that I'm much more generous to my little brothers than your father is to his children." Malfoy's tone was sarcastic and full of sarcasm. "Who asked you to send it?" Bernie's face was red and almost dripping blood. Malfoy's words were full of thorns, which made him feel uncomfortable. "Just wait. When the new semester starts, I will also have a Nimbus 2001. Bernie couldn't swallow this breath. He decided to go home and ask his father for more money to sell the Nimbus 2000 that he had rarely used and replace it with a new broom. Draco Malfoy. Haley couldn't hold back her anger after hearing Malfoy's last words and walked out of the alley quickly. "Are you going too far?" Malfoy narrowed his eyes and looked at Haley from top to bottom. "This is your sister, Selwyn?" Bernie's eyes lit up when he saw his sister, but then he saw Joel behind his sister and immediately lowered his head and sulked. I hope Mr. Malfoy will go home and learn from your doting parents. Haley's chest rose and fell violently, obviously very angry. How to communicate and talk with people normally, instead of attacking your classmates with aristocratic accents. 5 more tomorrow. From now on, there will be 5 updates every weekend, because the author has nothing to do. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, Disputes Caused by Nimbus 2001, Part 2. Malfoy obviously didn't care. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What? Did I say something wrong?" Haley wanted to go forward and pull Bernie back, but Joel grabbed her wrist. "Miss Selwyn, I didn't ask your brother to buy anything blindly." Malfoy stroked his blonde hair and pointed his nose at Bernie. "He insisted on coming up to me." Haley snorted. "Mr. Malfoy, please don't talk to my brother in that tone in the future. Miss Selwyn, please educate your brother on behalf of your parents," Malfoy said in a condescending manner. "Don't let him talk nonsense in the dormitory. Oh, by the way," Malfoy stretched out his voice, "I remember that after Christmas, classmate Selwyn once showed off a women's emerald bracelet in his dormitory. It was genuine and expensive at a glance." He said nothing more and turned away. Haley's face darkened. After the Christmas holiday last year, Mrs. Selwyn wrote to ask if her bracelet was taken by Haley. She searched for it at home for a long time, but couldn't find it. Haley didn't understand why her mother suspected her at that time. "Bernie." Haley lowered her voice, and Joel quickly released her hand and let her go forward to grab her brother. Bernie lowered his head. He didn't expect that this scene would be caught by his sister. This was more embarrassing than Malfoy's humiliation. He didn't dare to say anything. Haley pulled him to the alley, where he had been hiding before, crossed her chest with her hands and looked grim. "Tell me, what's going on?" Joel remembered that he seemed to have forgotten to tell Haley about the comparison between Bernie and Malfoy. It was all Malfoy's fault. If he hadn't interfered and stuffed Riddle's diary into his own, making him uneasy recently, he would definitely remember this matter. As for now, it's all Bernie's fault. Let him bear it himself. Bernie slowly raised his head and looked at his sister and found that her face was colder than he had ever seen before. So he quickly lowered his head, trembling and not daring to look her in the eye. He hesitantly explained the whole process, which was similar to what Joel heard on the train. Hearing this, Haley narrowed her eyes and raised the corners of her mouth dangerously. "Bernie, just because Malfoy showed off his luxury goods in the house at the beginning of the school term, you have to compare your life with him to see how affluent you are. You spent 2,800 galleons a year on this?" Haley was going crazy. "What did you buy?" I. Bernie blushed. "Just some custom-made robes, incense, leather shoes, a bunch of miscellaneous items, and a lot of jewelry and necklaces that I gave away at Christmas, and I often order some snacks and drinks from the 3 broomsticks to distribute to my classmates." "Okay." Haley took a deep breath. "Where is the emerald bracelet?" "That was the 10th anniversary gift from my father to my mother. I stuffed the bracelet back into the box when I went home for the holidays." Bernie's eyes were filled with tears. "I just showed off in front of my classmates. There's nothing else I meant." Haley's voice was even. "Bernie, how many times do you want me to emphasize that you can't focus your energy on pleasure seeking and comparing with each other? If you don't work hard now, it will be too late to make up for it when your parents pass away and you are in charge of the Selwyn family. You really disappoint me." Haley's face showed deep disappointment. "My parents and I have high hopes for you. We hope that you can shoulder the burden of the family one day. The reason why we have been responsive to your requests for so many years is that you can concentrate on your studies and family inheritance without worries. I didn't expect you to do such a childish thing." Haley shook her head. "I will tell my parents the whole story so that they can have a correct understanding of their baby son." "Sister." Bernie stepped forward and grabbed Haley's arm. Don't tell mom and dad, otherwise my pocket money this school year will be wasted." It is true that the Selwyn couple loves their son, but if they knew that Bernie stole the jewelry from the family to show off and squandered all the pocket money they had accumulated for many years to show off, Bernie would definitely not be in a good mood. No, Haley was very determined and broke free from Bernie's hand. I've reminded you many times, but you don't repent. I can't control you, so let my parents discipline you. After that, she hurried to the alley. If you tell my parents about this, I will go home and tell them about your relationship with Taylor. Let's see how they treat you. Bernie shouted angrily. Haley's back trembled violently, and then she walked forward without looking back. Joel was worried about Haley's condition, so he hurriedly trotted after her, leaving Bernie alone squatting in the dark and narrow alley. He successfully caught up with Haley at the door of Gringotts. Don't be too angry, Joel persuaded. Let's talk calmly after we go home. Haley turned her head. Her eyes were red and swollen. Her teeth bit her lower lip tightly, and 2 lines of tears could not stop falling. Fortunately, the sun hat on her head did not let passers-by see her in such a miserable state. Joel quickly pulled her back to the leaky cauldron. Tom was still wiping the wine glass. He saw Joel holding Haley's hand and walking upstairs with envy. In room 11, Joel asked Haley to sit on his bed, then took out 2 tissues and handed them to her. Haley cried silently without any sound. Tears kept falling out of her eyes like strings of pearls. Joel felt distressed when he saw her with tears in her eyes. Don't cry, he comforted her. You won't look good if you cry. Haley hit Joel with her fist and hiccuped in anger. Joel couldn't help laughing. You're still laughing. Haley wiped the tears from her face with the tissue. Her skin was so soft and tender that the tissue even left a few red marks on her cheeks. As soon as she opened her mouth, she hiccuped again, and Joel made a face. Haley was also amused and smiled. I don't understand why you're crying. Joel turned around and poured Haley a glass of water. Are you worried that we'll fall in love too early and your parents will come to my house? Go to hell. Haley rolled her eyes at him, and she finally stopped crying. You're really good at flattering yourself. Who's worried about you? Besides, there's no such thing as falling in love too early in the wizarding world. Haley took a sip of water. There are many examples of people falling in love in school and getting married after graduation. My parents were engaged in 6th grade. That's true, Joel thought. The Potters also got married right after graduation, and within 2 years Harry could ride a broom. First update. Chapter 124. Disputes caused by Nimbus 2001. Part 2. Then what did your brother mean by that last sentence? Joel was very confused. We aren't. Pure blood families pay more attention to bloodline. Haley's eyes were red, and with her fair face she looked like a little rabbit. You know the Weasley family, right? Of course. Joel raised his eyebrows. They are all in Gryffindor. They are called pure blood traitors in the pure blood circle. Haley explained to Joel. It's just because they don't discriminate against half-bloods and muggles. From this aspect, you should know how serious the discrimination against outsiders in the magic world is. Joel just nodded. He thought Haley was cute and charming when she was counting on her fingers to teach him. But there is a pure blood before their title of traitor, Haley said seriously. She looked at Joel's handsome appearance and took this opportunity to make herself forget her previous unhappiness. Although the Weasley family treats half-bloods well, their heirs must choose to marry pure blood descendants. Generally speaking, the definition of pure blood in the wizarding world is that both parents are wizards, but pure blood families do not follow this. Most of them adhere to this standard. Only 3 generations of direct relatives are wizards can be considered pure blood. What's more, for example, the Malfoy family, they can't wait to dig out the 18 generations of ancestors of the marriage partner to see the purity of their bloodline. Haley snorted coldly. Is the Selwyn family the same? Joel asked softly. Of course, otherwise why would Bernie threaten me with this? Haley replied. Joel's heart sank. Judging from the inheritance left by his parents, his mother is very likely a muggle. If he and Haley go to the end, will the Selwyn family accept him? Haley saw his worry, and she placed her palm on Joel's palm. To be honest, I wasn't worried about our future before. Although the Selwyn family is strict, that's the requirement for the heir. I can just leave and be expelled from the Selwyn family. But now, Bernie obviously can't support the Selwyn family. I'm afraid. Haley hesitated. After all, the Selwyn family gave birth to her and raised her, and they have a deep relationship. If the family continues to grow and develop smoothly, she can feel at ease to leave with Joel, but this happened now. Are you thinking too far ahead? Joel smiled. There are still 5 years before we graduate. Haley sighed. I don't know what Bernie is thinking. I'll go back and tell my parents and let them deal with this problem. She drank the water in the cup, then stood up and prepared to leave. I'll take you back, Joel said. No need. Haley waved her hand. I can just take the night bus back. I'll prepare the house contract when I get home and entrust this business to the company's people. If nothing goes wrong, you will receive the house key in the next 2 days. She explained everything. As for elective courses, I decided to choose Muggle Studies, Ancient Magic Runes and Arithmancy. Haley's eyes swept over the rune books on Joel's bed. Joel sent Haley to the bus and then returned to the bar. Uncle Tom at the bar asked them what they were doing upstairs in a rather gossipy way. Joel covered his ears and didn't answer. He quickly ran upstairs to clean up and wash up. After walking for most of the day in the hot summer, sweat stuck his robe to his body, which was very uncomfortable. In the evening, he finished reciting the Enamogus spell to his heart and lay on the bedboard. The entertainment in the magic world is extremely boring. There is no TV or internet. At night, all he can do is read books. But too many things happened today. He just picked up the rune phonetic table and read 2 pages before he felt he couldn't read anymore. He simply extinguished the candle he had just lit. He covered himself with a thin blanket and smelled a fragrance in a daze. He didn't know if it was his illusion. The next afternoon, a brown owl from Selwyn Real Estate Company brought the contract documents to Joel. Joel signed the contract, tied it to the owl's leg, and sent it back. In the evening, when it was almost time to get off work, there was a knock on the door of room 11. Joel looked through the peephole and saw a young man in a white robe standing outside the door with a briefcase. You are. Joel put his right hand holding the one behind his back and opened the door. Agent of Selwyn Real Estate Company, the man said respectfully, opening the briefcase. You have confirmed the details of the contract, right? He saw Joel nod, then took out a bunch of keys and a pile of documents from the bag. Please keep these documents well, the man reminded. Since the house you bought is located in a semi-wizard settlement, there is no muggle repelling spell on the house, which means that it still has the risk of exposing you. Please do not use magic props and spells within the sight of muggles. After reading a lot of details, Joel nodded to show that he understood, and then paid 80 galleons, including a 2% handling fee, in exchange for a lot of contract documents and a bunch of keys. The man said hello and wanted to leave. Excuse me. Joel suddenly spoke. Do you know what Haley Selwyn is doing now? Joel was nervous when he asked this question. Sorry, sir, I don't know, the man said with an apologetic tone. Miss Selwyn entrusted this order to me to complete last night and didn't say anything else. Joel sent the real estate agent away with some disappointment. He tried to send a letter to Haley this morning, but Poppy flew back in the afternoon with a sluggish look, and the letter was still tied to its legs. For some reason, the letter did not reach Haley. He moved out of the leaky cauldron with some worries. He spent a lot of money to clean up the garden of his home in Godric's Hollow, and bought some furniture. There is another advantage of placing the house in a semi-wizard settlement. He can use all kinds of convenient muggle appliances. He moved in the washing machine and TV one day after moving in. The boring nightlife was relieved, but Joel's worries did not diminish at all. Instead, they increased day by day. These days, he sent a letter to Haley every day, but there was no news from him, which annoyed Poppy the owl. The school day was getting closer and closer, and the list of books for Hogwarts was also sent. Joel had to make an appointment with his 3 roommates to go to Diagon Alley on August 15th to purchase school supplies. Time soon came to the appointed day, and Joel took the night bus and bumped all the way to Diagon Alley. Second update. Chapter 125. Gilderoy Lockhart. At 11:30 noon, the 4 CLBT members successfully met at the entrance of Diagon Alley. After a summer vacation, Sergi had grown a lot taller and looked taller than Joel. Eddie had a tendency to grow horizontally. His shoulders were broad and thick, and he looked like a rugby player. Have you seen the list of books? Eddie waved the parchment. It's all Gilderoy Lockhart. Who is he? A best-selling author. Joel shrugged. He, like us, has won the Order of Merlin, 3rd class. So many people. Alan was a little surprised at the sea of people in front of Flourish and Blots. There weren't so many people lining up to buy the CLBT magic course at its peak, right? Eddie said a little sourly. Gilderoy Lockhart will sign and sell his autobiography The Magic Me from 12:30 to 16:30 this afternoon. Joel looked at the banner on the Flourish and Blots and read in a low voice. I feel a little sick when I see his teeth. Eddie held his stomach, and Lockhart on the poster frequently showed his white teeth and flowing blonde hair. In fact, he is much better than you. A girl's voice suddenly came from behind the 4 people. Joel turned his head and found that it was the original Iron Triangle. Hermione was holding a copy of Lockhart's autobiography and looked at them indignantly. Although you all got the 3rd class Order of Merlin, you are not on the same level as him in terms of knowledge and ability. I admit that you have opened up the teaching materials market, but you just borrowed the existing exercise materials from various schools and the Ministry of Magic, and explained and analyzed them. But Mr. Lockhart wrote about his own personal experience, which contains a lot of experience for reference, and has extremely high practical value. Excuse me, are we familiar with each other? Eddie frowned and spread his hands, and Alan on the side laughed foolishly. Hermione blushed, and Ron and Harry on the side saw that she wanted to argue, so they quickly pulled her to line up. Why are all the girls in the queue? They're all pretty. Eddie looked at the beautiful girls in the long queue of book signings and felt extremely jealous. Joel had no doubt that Eddie could spray out a stream of acid when he opened his mouth, comparable to the acid throat in Warcraft. To be honest, I think Lockhart is not as good looking as me. Joel frowned, wondering why the girls in Hogwarts didn't pursue him. Oh, except for Haley. When he thought of her, Joel began to worry again. Hearing Joel's narcissistic words, the 3 roommates all cast their eyes on him and looked him up and down. I think so too. Eddie rubbed his chin and nodded. I have to say you are the most handsome boy I have ever seen. 100 times better than Lockhart. Joel didn't know if there was any personal affection involved. Alan also nodded, and Sergei pursed his lips and stabbed. I think it's because you are too short now and haven't developed well yet. The 14-year-old Joel was just 1.7 meters tall and looked thin. He was indeed not as manly as Lockhart. Are you going to wait in line for the book signing? Alan asked. Of course not. Eddie looked at the long line with disgust. I will never ask Lockhart for an autograph in my life. The 4 of them turned around and entered Flourish and Blot's bookstore from the middle of the crowd. They finally saw Gilderoy Lockhart's face. He sat behind a wooden table, surrounded by huge photos of himself. The faces in the photos were all blinking at the crowd, showing dazzling white teeth. The real Lockhart was wearing a sky blue robe that matched his blue eyes. The blue pointed wizard hat was playfully tilted on his golden curly hair. There was also a reporter from the Daily Prophet next to him, holding a camera in his hand and taking a handsome photo of Lockhart from time to time. Let's go, Eddie said, not even looking at Lockhart, as he walked into the bookstore. After buying the books, I want to buy some ice cream. It's too hot today. The 4 of them hurriedly purchased a whole set of Lockhart's books, all on the new semester's book list, and then a few elective textbooks. Students can choose to buy according to their actual situation. Joel bought a set of runes, a book called Introduction to Arithmetic Divination and Everyday Life of Muggles. The manager of Flourish and Blots looked tired, and while checking them out, he did not forget to look at the signing outside the store. There was a sudden noise in the long queue for the signing, causing several people outside the store to turn their heads to look. Lockhart stood up, hugged the helpless Harry, and smiled brightly at a camera. After taking a picture, he pulled the puppet-like Harry to change his pose, and once again showed his white teeth to the camera. Ugh. Although he had lowered his voice, Joel still heard Eddie's vomiting sound, obviously disgusted by Lockhart's behavior. Very narcissistic, right? The bookstore manager was familiar with them, and grinned at Eddie's reaction. But girls like him. They are willing to spend money to buy Lockhart's autobiography and the brands he endorses. It's a sure win for me to invite him to come here for a book signing. Joel had to admit that Lockhart was very good at managing his image. This was not only about maintaining his external image, but also about his attitude towards fans. As long as you liked him, he would stop and talk to you, and take a photo with you with a charming smile. He also liked to take advantage of celebrities. For example, the boy who survived was manipulated by Lockhart like a puppet, and took countless photos in front of reporters. "Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to me quietly," Lockhart said loudly. He pressed his palm down to signal everyone to be quiet. Joel found that this was exactly the same as Dumbledore's action when he gave a speech before the start of the school year. This is the first book signing event for I'm Magical in the UK. I also held one in New York before, and their performance was no less impressive than yours. Today, I want to take advantage of this wonderful occasion to announce a small thing that I have been holding back for a while. Lockhart showed his white teeth again, and his arm around Harry's shoulder suddenly tightened. This September, I will accept the invitation of Professor Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts, and officially become the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor at Hogwarts. The book signing team cheered enthusiastically. Gilderoy's ability will definitely make him a good candidate for a teaching position at Hogwarts, right? Didn't you hear Mr. Lockhart say that Professor Dumbledore personally invited him? As expected of Mr. Gilderoy, should he be called Professor Lockhart now? This year, the students are so lucky to receive Professor Lockhart's careful guidance. This is the third update. There should be 4 updates today, and another 4 will be added tomorrow to make up for it. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.